Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. Hey, warmer friendly hello, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Eaps Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends as we chat with Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network about what we saw in terms of the challenges over the last week or so, the dominance of the SEC, the, lack of dominance of the ACC. We're going to take a look at some of Sunday's games and so much more. Then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @G_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a great day of college basketball on Saturday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Perhaps the best game of the day on Saturday was the last one. Kentucky goes on the road. They erase a 17-point deficit. They get the job done against Gonzaga, this by kind of 90-89. Gonzaga cold from 3. They go 6 of 27 from distance, and Graham Ike had himself a game. 28 points, 11 rebounds, as Gonzaga does eventually lose battle on the glass by a count of 43-42, but he was rock solid. 13 total turnovers in this game, despite the fact that it went to overtime, so very clean game. Ryan Nembhard, 13 points, 10 assists, just 1 turnover in this one, but Kentucky had on their side guys that were able to knock down the deep shot like Jackson Robinson, who supplied the team with 18 points. All but one of their starters, Kirk Risa, were able to score north of 12 points in this one. So Kentucky, they find a way to be able to get the job done. The earliest game of the day, that was St. John's. They completely took it to Kansas State, 88-71, as the Big East trying to be able to reintroduce themselves after a little bit of a rough start to the season. Right now, that's going well for them, with Zuby Ejiofor being able to supply the team 20 points, 13 rebounds for St. John's. They play even up with regards to turnovers, but win the rebound battle 51-40, as for Kansas State, Brandon Housen did pump in their 27 points. He goes 6 of 10 from 3, the rest of the team 2 of 15 from 3-point range, and you had Doug McDaniel actually coming off the bench in this game as well. So some interesting adjustments there. In terms of the ACC, it was not necessarily an exciting day for a lot of these teams, as the big favorites did not cover. Wake Forest, they get the job done outright on the money line, but not on the spread, 72-66 against Boston College, as BC goes 12 of 30 from 3-point range. Notre Dame, same thing. They win outright on the money line, but they do not cover the spread against Syracuse. This by kind of 69-64, as Notre Dame does go 8 of 22 from 3, with Ben Shrewsbury being able to supply the team with a 6 of 11 3-point shooting performance. Clemson did cover, though. They go on the road. They take it to Miami, 65-55, a game that was an almighty slog. And for Miami, 4 of 25 from 3-point range. Nigel Pack had as many points as myself. 0. Not very good, to say the least. And for North Carolina, they got a massive scare from Georgia Tech. They get the job done on the money line, but 68-65, their high-powered offense, well, it was tamed by them going 5 of 24 from 3-point range. RJ Davis just hasn't looked the same this year. 16 points, 7 boards, did so on 15 shots, though. And for North Carolina, they lose a turnover battle by a count of 18-14. Did win the rebound battle, though, 48-37. And then NC State, they do end up covering in overtime over Florida State, 84-74, as for Florida State, they went straight down the toilet bowl after regulation. For NC State, 8 of 23 from 3-point range. Marcus Hill, he's able to supply the team with 23 points. And then if you're looking at more of the top 25 games that we did see on Saturday, this one was a fun one between Marquette and Wisconsin, but Marquette, they pull away in the second half. They do get the job done by a count of 88-74, as Cam Jones, he was killer Cam in this one, as he goes 12 of 21 from the floor, 32 total points for Marquette. Just 5 turnovers in this game. Wisconsin, they had 16, and that was a killer, as Wisconsin did go 10 of 26 from 3-point range. Max Kliesman puts in there 22 points. Stephen Kroll only 2 points, but he supplied the team with 11 rebounds, but not enough to be able to get the job done there. In terms of the ACC, Pittsburgh, one of the lone teams not named Duke or North Carolina, having a solid year. They got a scare from Virginia Tech, 64-59. The final in this one, as for Pittsburgh, they go just 6 of 28 from 3, but they made their free throws. They went 12 of 12 at the charity stripe. Very big in this one, as for Pittsburgh, you had a pair of guys in Jalen Lowe along with Ishmael be able to combine for 36 points. That powered them to victory. A lot of non-covers by ranked teams on this day. As San Diego State, they were laying well north of 20 against San Diego. They get the job done, but they don't quite cover that number. 74-57. The final is for San Diego State, just 5 of 17 from 3, though. San Diego, they go 6 of 32 from 3-point range. By the way, UC San Diego, all over the Meet Roadrunners. They won that game by 20+. Lots of good things happening out there in the lovely city of San Diego. Ole Miss, they do cover that spread against Lindenwood. A lot of places close this more around about 30.5. 86-53 the final. This despite the fact that Lindenwood was actually holding in there. This game was, I believe, tied with about a minute remaining in the first half, and then Ole Miss just went on a massive bonsai charge for Lindenwood. It did not help the fact that they lost the turnover battle 15-7. They lost the rebound battle, and Sean Badula be able to supply Ole Miss with 19 points. Houston, they were able to mollywop Butler, this by kind of 79-51, as Butler was, needless to say, very slow getting out of the gates. They had, I believe, 6 points in the first 13 minutes of this game. Patrick McCaffrey was able to give the team 11 points, but for Butler, on 2-point shots, they went 4 of 22. They had 12 turnovers to Houston's 11, and Houston won the rebound battle 41-22 as Jawan Roberts down low, 12 boards, and then LJ Cryer, he was able to supply the team with 20 points. Alcorn State gave Oklahoma a little bit more of a battle than we were expecting, 94-78. Oklahoma does get the job done as they get a 4 of 10 3-point shooting performance out of Dayton Forsyth off the bench, and for Oklahoma overall, they go 12 of 37 from 3-point range, but Oklahoma didn't necessarily bludgeon on the glass the way that you'd expect. 31-29, they won that battle, but Alcorn State, give them a little bit of credit. They were able to hold in there, and we are seeing some Big Ten action going down right now, and in the Big Ten, you saw both Michigan schools win. Only one Michigan school got a cover, and it was not the Wolverines. 85-83. Iowa on the road, pretty spirited effort. Don't quite pull it out as Peyton Sanford went for 19 points, but he needed 20 shots to get there. But for Michigan, they go just 4 of 20 from 3-point range, but they went 7 of 22 at the free throw line. Iowa 10 of 17 at the charity stripe, though I will say this, Michigan 17 turnovers to Iowa's 4. You're not going to win too many games losing the turnover battle 17-4. Word to the wise there. And for Michigan State, it was just a complete dump trucking of Nebraska. 89-52 the final. For Michigan State, they go 9 of 23 from 3-point range, 22 of 23 at the free throw line, and they won the rebound battle 45-19. Yeah, Simon Zapala and Jackson Kaler by themselves have 18 rebounds, and that was one fewer than Nebraska had as a team. For USC, they go into Washington and they dump truck them, 85-61 the final. It's looking like it's going to be a long year for Washington. They go 12 of 21 at the free throw line. Grado Sabor was not so great. He had 9 points in this one. The backcourt was all sorts of awful. USC wins the turnover battle. They play even up on the glass, but also saw USC be able to get a really nice performance out of Desmond Cloud, who was able to supply the team with 20 points. And then the former Washington Husky, Wesley Yates, he got his first career start against Washington, and he was able to put up 19 points on them. So that was a big, giant effort. Other games that we saw in college basketball on Saturday, UMass Lowell goes on the road, and they prolong the misery of UMass. UMass now 3-7 this season. UMass Lowell on the road, 96-83 winners, as UMass goes 2 of 14 from 3. Meanwhile, UMass Lowell was 30 of 34 at the free throw line, 27 points out of Quincy Mincy. So that was a really nice effort. Rhode Island, they go in and they get the job done against Providence on their home floor, 69-63. A nice statement from Archie Miller's bunch, who have been really playing all gas, no breaks this far this season, but they were able to get 19 big points out of Sebastian Thomas. And For Providence, just 5 of 20 from three-point range have not been savory for them. Loyal Chicago win, but no cover against South Florida, 74-72. That turned out to be very much a nip-and-tuck game. Saw a lot of bigger favorites on cover, like St. Bonaventure, 65-55. They get the win, but no cover over the Buffalo Bulls after it looked like Buffalo was just going to get completely rolled in this one. Buffalo loses that turnover battle by a count of 18-11. St. Bonaventure was up double figures for pretty much the entirety of the game, but could never really get this one out of reach to be able to cover the 17.5. So, yay verily there for Buffalo, and yay verily for Creighton. They aren't going to be without Pop Isaacs for the rest of the season, but they do get the job done for a winning cover over UNLV. This by a count of 83-65, and going to be interesting to see how they utilize Mason Miller moving forward, as they were gluing him to the bench to begin the season. But he comes in, he got the start in this one, scored as many points as myself, but he got off the bench. Aiden Trout be able to supply the team with 15 points, and Jason Green had 12 points. Ryan Kalkbrenner, 12 points, 6 boards. A pretty home day for him, but Steve Ashworth being back, that's big. He was able to supply the team with 17 points as well. You saw Washington State be able to take it to Boise State by a count of 74-69. I know that's a big border sort of battle, and for Washington State, they go to 6 of 22 from three-point range, but they shot north of 50% from the floor. They did a good job of being able to play even up on the glass, and for Boise State, you did have Andrew Meadow off the bench supply the team with 21 points, but not so much out there in the backcourt. Tyson Dagenhart put in their 18 points, but you've been getting about 13 points per contest out of Javon Buchanan. Yeah, just a deuce in this one, and dropping a deuce and not necessarily giving you a good effort. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, 67-48. They fall to Texas A&M Corpus Christi, so they're looking like a little bit of a fade this season. The top over team in all of college basketball is North Florida, and they got another over, and they do not win against Georgia Southern. That was a 93-91 final, but they were able to explode for a big effort, and they were down 16 points with 8:24 remaining. They forced overtime. It was a total of 163.5, so you needed the overtime in order to be able to get this one over. Well, you needed it to go to overtime to be able to get it over, but they were able to do so for you, and yay verily for Arkansas Pine Bluff, who will not be winless this year against D1 competition, 84-78. They take it to Central Arkansas as a home underdog, so they were able to do a solid job there. Right now, you've got two teams without an over in all of college basketball this year. That would be Oakland, and that would be Wagner. Wagner is going to be in action on Sunday, and then for Oakland, they lose to Youngstown State 66-50. Just absolutely no offense to be had whatsoever there in Youngstown State. 1 over to 8 unders for them as well. So that's been less than tremendous. Stephen F. Foster, I mentioned before, they played another under on Saturday. So that means that they have 1 over to 7 unders. I don't think many people had this on their bingo card, but right now your best cover team in all of college basketball, Oregon State. They are now 7-0 against the spread. They do go out there and they get the job done on Saturday, that being against Idaho by a count of 78-62. This was a line that closed in that neighborhood about 14.5, as Pasa Falah was able to supply the team with 25 points. So nice renaissance here for them. St. Bonaventure, a team that I mentioned a little bit before, their cover against Buffalo, their first on cover of the season, 8-1 against the spread. And another team has been covering a whole bunch of spreads. How about the Furman Paladins as a home underdog? They do get the job done against Princeton. This by a count of 69-63. Princeton, a very efficient offense that could only go 6 of 19 from three-point range. Princeton actually did a solid job on the glass, but they do lose that battle 38-34. But for Furman, 23 points out of P.J. Smith. That was able to power them to victory and get the job done. Another team has been very surprising against the spread. How about Houston Christian? They have been able to cover all but one of their games thus far this season. They do fall at home to Northwestern State. That's by a count of 64-57, their first on cover of the college basketball season. So they've been interesting. Elon, a team that I've been trusting in quite a bit, they are now 7-1 against the spread as well. They get the job done against Wofford, 79-56, and what was pretty close to a pick'em game at the start. They closed around 2.5-point favorites, and Sam Sherry, well, he was very merry. He was able to give you 22 points, so they were able to get it done. And Liberty now 7-1 against the spread. They got the task of old Mississippi Valley State on Saturday. They needed to cover a line of 35, and they won 89-52. Mississippi Valley State. A skid mark on the underpants of college basketball as of right now. This has been interesting as well. How about the against the spread record of Florida A&M? They are currently 6-1 right now. They were not in action on Saturday, and they played against a non-D1 team on Friday, but they've been of intrigue, and then also out there in the SWAC, Grambling. They've covered all all but one game thus far this season as Pepperdine. They dropped them on Saturday by a count of 85-57, so that was a nice hearty non-cover, but UC San Diego was able to drop Cal State Bakersfield. They're now 7-2 against the spread as well, so they've been cover machines. Right now, your lone team without a cover in college basketball is Louisiana. We'll be seeing them in action on Sunday, but 1-8 against the spread is the University of Penn, and in the Philly 5 matchup that they had against Drexel, they scored 47 points, 60-47. They lose this game as Nick Spinoso had 21 of those 47 points. The team went 4 of 18 from 3, and they got absolutely nothing going whatsoever, so not a lot going right for them. Texas Southern has been pretty miserable against the spread as well, 1-7 against the spread. For them, they were in good position against Sam Houston early on. They actually led that game at the half, and then they managed to not cover 11.5. They lose 87-71, so been a little bit of a rough state of affairs out there for them. A team that I was somewhat bullish on going into the season. I have no idea why, because Marvin Menzies is not a great coach. UMKC, they are now a nice hearty 1-6 against the spread. They lose to Montana State 74-62, so not looking great out there for them. And Vermont is now 2-9 against the spread. Wake Forest is as well. We already recapped them, but for old Vermont, man, oh man, things are not looking great for them as the America East, we'll talk about this a little bit later with our good friend Ryan McIntyre, looks quite open. 65-50. They lose to a Yale team that wasn't playing a lick of defense going into this game as they went 7-27 from three-point range. They lost the battle on the glass, and they're looking like a rudderless ship right now. So that's not good to say the least. And for Miami, they're now 2-7 against the spread with their non-cover on Saturday. Another team that's 2-7 against the spread. You had an unexpected scare in the Arkansas versus UTSA game. Meep, the Roadrunners had the lead at the half. They do not close it out as for Arkansas, they win by a count of 75-60, but that was a little bit less than tremendous. South Carolina has been a bit less than tremendous against the spread. They get the win, but they do not get the cover against East Carolina by a count of 75-60. As for South Carolina, Jabari Thomas was able to step up. He did supply the team with 22 points in this one, so that was solid, and this was also a very solid win. How about a right around 20-point underdog? Winning outright on the money line. New Mexico State, they go on the road. They take it to New Mexico 89-83 as New Mexico State, a blistering 14 of 31 from three-point range. Robert Carpenter off the bench, 20 points. He makes 6 threes. You had a 6 of 9, very nice three-point shooting performance out of Christian Cook as well. And for New Mexico, 10 of 32 from distance, 13 of 22 at the free throw line. Nelly Jr. Joseph did all that he could, 16 points, 17 rebounds. But you had Donovan Dent give away a pair of turnovers, only 4 assists out of him. CJ Nolan and Drew Washington, they went a combined 6 of 21 from the floor for 15 points. Just simply not going to cut it there, but what is going to cut it is looking at all the trends that we're getting in college basketball. And right now, season to date, the overs and the unders are as equal as it gets. 747 overs, 748 unders, so the unders have a 1-game lead on overs right now. Favorites, they continue to be pretty miserable in college basketball. 720, 772, and 23 against the spread, so that's about a 48.3% hit rate. But if you do look at the last 7 days, favorites starting to trend upward, hitting at 52%, 144, 133, and 5 against the spread, while unders have been reigning supreme over the last 7 days, 136 overs to 142 unders. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Saturday. Now let's take a look at Sunday's games, what we saw in terms of these conference challenges, and so much more with our good friend Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast. So right here on Guest with myself, David Peterson, now part of the Peace and Family Podcast. And we're back in lovely Las Vegas for Cuscusy with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as we've got Ryan McIntyre aboard. He does such a tremendous job with the Sports Gambling Podcast Network with our good friend Kobe Dant. They do the college experience, taking a look at all of these college basketball games, but additionally does a really good job out there on the gridiron as we are getting closer and closer to the college football playoff. That is going to be a lot of fun. You're able to follow him on Twitter /X at Moneyline_Mac, spelled M-A-C on Mac. And it's always a pleasure, Ryan. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me, Greg. Yeah, we're 1 month in, and I think we're finally starting to figure out some of these teams.
Absolutely. And how do you take a look at that first month of the season? Because personally, I put a little bit more credence into some of these games that weren't a part of some of those holiday tournaments because I just feel like things go completely wackadoo with those holiday tournaments. Maybe it's just me and the way that I evaluate them, but I feel like you get a lot of randomness and a lot of craziness, whereas with like the Big 12 versus Big East Challenge, the ACC SEC Challenge, I put a lot of credence there, and certainly I'm stock up on the SEC right now.
Absolutely. And I think that it's more valuable evaluating these challenges and maybe some of the early season games that were on actual campuses, just because some of these neutral site games can be such a crapshoot. I mean, you got games in the ballroom, you got games in Maui, and just different crazy venues. So definitely dive more into the challenge. And I honestly like to fade the narrative coming out of some of these holiday tournaments just because those games are so viewed, but it may be some of reality and a reflection of what the team is to come.
Yep, absolutely. I can recall myself in college. You tried to send me on a business trip to Maui. I probably would be a little bit distracted, and you never know what you're going to be getting out there. Now you got guys a little bit more focused, a little bit more ready to go. And in terms of those challenges, I thought it was really intriguing what we've seen over the last week or so with them, as the Big 12, looking, in my opinion, still pretty solid out there against the Big East. So you had a few hiccups with BYU losing to Providence, certainly Kansas falling to Creighton, but I just take a look at the domination in the SEC versus ACC challenge, and I think that that's the biggest takeaway, in that the ACC looks like it's, oh no, we stink again, aside from Duke and maybe North Carolina, even though they had a tough time with Georgia Tech on Saturday. And then for the SEC, it just looks like 1 through 16 is stacked at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how many teams for the SEC right now in the top 55? It's basically almost the whole league. You know, Greg, I know this is a basketball show, but I think it is a trickle down of the football money that is just coming into these universities, these athletic programs. And I think it's a testament to of the different hires that these programs have hired over the last couple of years, whether it's Nate Oates at Alabama, Bruce Pearl at Auburn, you got Todd Golden at Florida. He's been really good. I like Mark Pope at Kentucky. You got Chris Beard, who's been to a Final Four at Ole Miss. Chris Jans is one of the best coaches at Mississippi State. Buzz Williams at A&M. And you can go down the list, Mike White at Georgia, and et cetera. I just think that the money is finally showing up for the SEC on the basketball side of things now from football. And for the ACC, you just kind of look at the Big 12 versus Big East challenge or the games that were on the SEC venues. The ACC has not invested in their programs, in their athletic departments, and in their coaching hires. I mean, they've lost Coach K, they've lost Boeheim, they've lost Roy Williams, Rick Pitino, and they really have not reloaded with the same caliber coach like I just alluded to with the SEC.
Yep, and you had the ACC's commissioner having no idea who Miami's quarterback was either. That's not necessarily the world's greatest look for them as well. So things really not going well for the ACC right now. And I'm right there with you, because I was having this conversation when I was doing my live stream today. Is Virginia Tech perhaps the worst power conference team in all of college basketball right now? Because like those teams in the Big East, DePaul has improved. Now, Seton has really been spitting the bit this year. I have to throw that in there. But I just take a look at Virginia Tech right now, and the way that they have fallen off the table has been magnificently awful.
Them and Seton Hall have been very underwhelming in the non-con. But you know what's crazy is Virginia Tech almost knocked off Pitt. This is the problem when you lose bye games. I like to talk about on our show is when you lose these bye games, you really put your league in a bad situation where if Pitt had lost that game to Virginia Tech, or somebody loses to Virginia Tech this year, or Georgia Tech, or Boston College, or Syracuse, et cetera, it really hurts the league in terms of getting another at-large bid. It turns into, for this league, they're just going to have so many limited opportunities at quad 1, quad 2 wins because of the basement of the league. And I would say right now the ACC is probably going to be a 4-bid league again, just because they have done themselves no favors in November. And I know they'll talk about their success in March, but if you shoot yourself in the foot and bury yourself in November, you can't get to March with more than 4 teams.
Yep, absolutely. And for the ACC, I like what I'm seeing out of Clemson right now, but it's really the lone team I'm stuck up on, other than Duke, who's obviously been rock solid all season long, is joining me on the show. We do have Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And with regards to Duke, they do have themselves a big game on Sunday, and that is going to be one of the bigger games that we're going to be seeing, as they're currently 9 to 9.5 point favorites against Louisville with a total of 144. How do you evaluate this game? Because with Louisville, I think that out of the teams in the ACC, they have the highest ceiling, just because with Duke, I think that they've reached quite a bit of their ceiling already. They're a top 5 team. They're a team that's very rock solid, but with Louisville shooting just 29% from 3-point range, I see that going northward, and if that goes northward, I think they can cover this number against Duke.
I think they will too. I mean, they just got embarrassed in that challenge that we talked about. Just like half of the ACC, it felt like. That was the other thing about the ACC-SEC challenge. Half of the games were just total beatdown blowouts. It wasn't like, oh, the ACC lost a bunch of games by 1 possession. But yeah, I think even though Louisville is shorthanded without Pryor and company, I do think that they can keep this within the number. You will get a little bit of a sleepy Duke spot, in my opinion, coming off that emotional win against Auburn, a max effort against them. But Louisville, I think, is due for one of these games in that building to make shots at a high clip. And you know that environment will be unbelievable for the Dukies coming in.
Oh, you know that it will be. And for Louisville, they have been dying for a good opportunity as well, because with the pain train the last 2 seasons, boy, that was painful if you were a Louisville fan. So good to see Pat Kelsey getting things back online there. And then I think that this game is interesting as well. This is going to be another one of those late afternoon games between UCLA and Oregon. And right now, Oregon is a 3.5-point favorite. But what stands out to me is a total of a 141, because Oregon has done a nice job executing on offense, but we saw them hold down USC in the back half of that game. And if you look at just raw points allowed on a per possession basis, UCLA is right at the top of college basketball right now. What do you make on this one with the UCLA team that's leaving something to be desired on offense, but has really been playing some hard-nosed defense?
It kind of feels like strength versus strength here. I mean, well, what Oregon did in Vegas was unbelievable, winning those 3 games against those 3 quality opponents in that many days. I guess when you put $1.5 million, you may be a little bit more motivated to get it done. I do like UCLA to get this done. I think they're going to hand Oregon their first loss. Mick Cronin and company, they've matched up well against Dana Altman over the years, and Mick's teams have always been good defensively. You go back to at Cincinnati, so I think that this is a tough turnaround for Oregon, coming off a game where they probably should have lost to USC the other night, but they were able to steal that and even cover the game somehow late. I like UCLA to keep this thing close and win it outright at the end.
Yep, and I just don't know if either team is going to be able to get to 70 points in this one as well. I feel like it's a little bit correlated in terms of the under and UCLA, and I'm right there with you. As joining me on the show, we do have Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Ryan, as we're doing this, a lot of the Saturday games are wrapping up. We're doing this right around about 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. And just over the last week or two, obviously we're stocked up on the SEC. I think that we made that very apparent with the way that we've talked about on this podcast. But we're just a few teams in particular that the more that you look at them, the more that you're feeling good about them, because I bring this up with Rhode Island getting the job done against Providence, and their team in an A-10 that I think is going to be so fascinating that it looks like things are finally starting to come together under Archie Miller.
It does. I mean, what a win. Down 7 at the half, 9-0 now for the first time in forever. Another team that doesn't have a blemish on their resume is Loyola Chicago. I know they were tested, but 8-0 so far in the year. And Greg, I think we need to start having the conversation. Is Tennessee the best team in the country? They lose Dalton Connect, but then they bring in Chaz Lanier from North Florida, mesh him in with Ziegler. They've been completely dominant. They head to the Jimmy V Classic later this week, but I mean, when they win, they don't just win. They absolutely suffocate their opponents. And, of course, I got to shout out my anteaters at UC Irvine. They've been extremely impressive at 9-0 out there in the Big West, and continue to be impressed by first-year head coaches here, Greg, with Jared Calhoun at Utah State and Ben McCollum at Drake.
Yes, absolutely. And we've been seeing a lot of topsy-turviness at the mid-major ranks as well, because UC Irvine has been one of the few constants. You always know that UC Irvine is going to be towards the top of the Big West, but Colgate has not looked good out of the Patriot League. Vermont took another bad loss. Losing to Yale is not bad. The way that they lost was bad, not being able to get past a 52-point marker. And I feel like a lot of these conferences that we thought were foregone conclusions for some of these teams, heck, even McNeese has looked a little bit wobbly out there in a Southland, where I've been liking a lot of the other teams as well. It feels like a lot of these conferences where we thought that we knew who that favorite team was going to be, sans really the Big West, are more open than we thought coming into the season.
We talk about this all the time on the show. It's kind of, maybe we crowned a couple of these mid-major darlings too early. Grand Canyon's another one, in High Point. I know that they got a big wins recently, but they looked a little bit shaky coming out of the gate. We all were in love with UAB. They finally were able to blow somebody out. I know it was Alcorn State, but a little bit of life there. But yeah, I think this game and just the whole landscape of college basketball is as even and open as I can ever remember it. Maybe that's the NIL and the transfer portal, where guys can transfer at any moment and play right away, and the depth on these teams isn't as good. I just think this is going to be a very exciting year.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that this is going to be a tremendous season. I think that we're going to see some surprise teams be able to make it to the NCAA tournament this year, especially from the mid-major ranks. As joining me on the show, we do have Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. And then do have to talk about this big game as well. Texas, they are back to being a favorite against UConn. For UConn, we saw them get up off the mat. They got a nice win against Baylor and what again was such an interesting Big 12 versus Big East challenge. Now they have to go on the road where they just have not really won any games away from Shores, Connecticut. What do you make out of this one with the Texas team that I think they've got a lot of upside with Tremont Mark now coming back?
I like the Longhorns here. I'm not going to completely buy into the UConn one-game bump where it was kind of the whole Big East back against the wall. We got to change the narrative going against the Big East right now. I think UConn fit right into that, and Hurley was good with the motivational angle. But I'm with you. I like Texas. I like Kaluma. I like Pope and Weaver and Shedrick. And I just think that they're coming together. They lost the opener, but winners of 7 straight. Got a big road win at NC State earlier in the week. I like for them to pull away and maybe win by double digits against UConn.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be an interesting one. I can't get to double figures, but I'm going to be willing to lay the small number myself with Texas. I feel like they should be a one-possession favorite in this game. And just how do you take a look at this UConn bunch? Because I don't think that they're as bad as what they showed at the Maui Invitational. They literally finished 8 out of 8 teams, and I'm willing to say that they're a little bit better than that. But I mean, it's an interesting team that they lost so much from a season ago, and now they're dealing with the Alex Caravan injury on top of that.
I think it's an example of it's not as bad as it seems. It's not as good as it seems. I don't think that they're close to being a Final Four team like everybody wanted to pencil them in at the beginning of the year. They just lost too much with all those draft picks. When you have the 2nd and 3rd pick in the draft on top of Sonogo leaving the year before and Tristan Newton and different guys, it was just so much to repair here. And I think Hurley will get them playing their best ball come March. I think that they're probably going to be a 21 to 24 type win season. Probably be like a 5 or 6 seed in March and just be a solid team all year long. It won't be that they're going to be in the CBI or have a losing record, but I definitely do not think that they're going to go back to the Final Four this year.
That would be somewhat hilarious to see. And UConn has accepted a invite to the CBI where they look to try to prolong a record of being able to hold up banners. So I don't know if in Stores, Connecticut, they would want to be hanging up a CBI banner.
No.
I would love to hold up a CBI banner, but I don't think that they would personally. But that said, with regards to what we've all got for Sunday, anything else that's really standing out to you? Because we hit upon some of the big games, but as we know, there are quite a few other interesting ones. We've got a few games out there at Dickies Arena. We've got Memphis in action. We've got a lot of mid-major action. A little bit of something for everyone. So anything else that you're really paying attention to?
I know it's a true road game, and I don't like taking road teams, but I do like the Jayhawks bouncing back. This game is personal and kind of a get-up spot for Bill Self, in my opinion. Missouri leaving the Big 12 the way they did, and Kansas off the embarrassing loss. So I'm going to lay the 6.5 with Kansas at Missouri. I think that it's kind of a statement game, and he's had Dennis Gates' number. I think it's a good matchup for Dickinson inside, and they can play inside out. The other game I like Texas Tech over Texas A&M down there in Fort Worth at the Dickies Arena Challenge, where you got the doubleheader with Vandy and TCU. I just think Texas Tech are finding their rhythm here, and I think they're playing better and better basketball with the one hiccup on the resume against St. Joe's. I like the veteran group of Texas Tech to make a statement here and beat A&M.
And I know that you were talking about perhaps Tennessee being the best team in all of college basketball. Many were making that case for Auburn before their loss a few days ago against Duke, and I think that they should be able to clobber Richmond on Sunday, but do you think we've gone a little bit too far with this opener as I'm doing this being between about 27 after 28? Because this does feel a little bit disrespectful to our good friends, the Itsy Bitsy Spiders.
Yeah, I think so too. And you know how Mooney wants to play. He wants to slow it down. So you may get some limited possessions. If they cannot turn the ball over, definitely think they can stay within the number. But that's a lot easier said than done when you're playing in the jungle. So, yeah, I would take the points there. Auburn's just been playing in so many big game after big game after big game, emotional spot after emotional spot. So, yeah, I would look to take the points there. But, of course, with these bigger numbers, I usually wait because the public money will come in on Auburn.
Yep, and heck, as we've been doing the show, we've already been seeing money coming in on Duke, and my money's always on you doing a great job on this guest spot, my friend. As Ryan, I know that you do such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. You've been around coaching for a very long time. You're part of the South Carolina, West Virginia staff, so you know all about this great game. Let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
I appreciate it, Greg. Yeah, you guys can find me at Moneyline_Mac and go check us out every single night of the year on the College Experience and Ryan and Rush Show for all you Mountaineer fans out there.
Absolutely. Ryan does such a great job taking a look at this wonderful game of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So big thanks to Ryan for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots. All right, guys, it's getting into crunch time with regards to our holiday shopping because Thanksgiving is come and gone. We're through Black Friday. We're in the month of December, and you need to get that unique gift for someone that you truly care about. Uncommon Goods, that is a perfect place to go because they've got something for everyone, whether that be an experience or a gift that you just can't find anywhere else. Like, I've been in a lot of circumstances where I try to get something for my mom because when you're a guy and you're trying to shop for your mom, you have no idea what in the heck to do. Just being able to get something that's a little bit off the walls is what Uncommon Goods does a great job of. Their products are high quality, they're unique, and oftentimes handmade or made in the United States, and they have the most meaningful, out-of-the-ordinary gifts anywhere. They even have gifts that you can customize for those that are book lovers, diehard sports fans. They've got unique mugs, and if you're gifting for someone that doesn't want a thing, they want an experience, they want to be able to take part in something that is fun. They've got classes from everything from reading a lunar astrology chart, some unique cooking classics, mixology, and so much more. And you can get 15% off right now over at uncommongoods.com/coast. You go to uncommongoods.com/coast. You get 15% off of your order. That is over at uncommongoods.com/goods. Uncommon Goods, we're out of the ordinary. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love every single time he joins me, lends such great insights, and did so once again today. So big thanks to Ryan for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at JN_41. Going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go pretty much in time order with regards to bigger conferences, and then the games involving teams in smaller conferences, the MEAC, the SWAC, the Northeast Conference, the Southland, the Big South, the Patriot League, the America East, if I haven't said it already. Those are going to be the games at the bottom. So how about if we do get things started with old 751, 752 on the card. Richmond is on the road. They're facing off against Auburn. Auburn a 27 to a 28-point favorite in your total on this game, and between 143.5 to a 145. This will be a game that I write up, and I'm willing to take the points here with Richmond. Richmond entered into Saturday 42nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home. They've actually been rock solid with that regard. It's an Auburn team that has been a very, very stifling defense at home, but overall they're outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, I say that with them having played one of the toughest schedules in all of college basketball. You play the Maui Invitational, you play against Houston. Yeah, those are a lot of good teams, along with that game against Duke. And Gianni Broome going to be the most dominant player in this game. 20.5 points, 12.5 boards, 3.5 assists, shooting it from three-point range. You've got Chad Baker-Mazara, who should see a bit of regression from his 48% three-point shooting, but now you've got the freshman in Pettiford being able to step up as Todd Pettiford. He's been able to give you 3 assists. He's been able to shoot 40% from three-point range. Richmond, they're simply not going to be able to control that, but they do have a guy in Delani Hunt who's able to give you 20 points per contest. They've gotten a little bit of versatility out of Jonathan Beagle. Last year was 7-footer Neil Quinn that was able to lend that versatility, but for Beagle, right around about 6'9", 6'10", 6.5 boards, 7.5 points, 3.5 assists, like what he's able to bring to the table. Dusan Niskovich has a little bit of size, and he's not giving you any scoring, but Apostolos Romoglu, he's come in from UConn. He had 6'8", has been able to give you about 7 boards per contest. I think Richmond is going to be able to hold in there from more of a defensive standpoint. Their offense, it's not really amazing to say the least. I did set my total here at a 144.5. Right now, with the numbers I've got, personally, I would take a 145 under at this point rather than the 143.5 over, because this is going to be a little bit of an earlier game, noon Eastern time, so I do think that guys might be a little bit groggy, but I feel like this number has gotten a little bit out of control. I think that Richmond holds within, north of 3 touchdowns at this point. Set my line at 24.5, so taking the Mondo 27 plus here with Richmond, and I'm in on the under. 753, 754 on the betting board. Purdue plays host to Maryland. Maryland finds themselves between 3.5 and 4-point underdogs, and your total on this game between 143 to 143.5. It's up by total 141.5. I'm in on the under. Got two teams that are well outside the top 175 in terms of total possessions per game. Now, Maryland has been cooking on offense. A little bit of credit where it is due, but I do think that after Purdue had a less than savory effort a few days ago against Penn State, they're going to be able to bounce back here against a Maryland team that, in their own right, last year they were one of the better teams at generating turnovers in all of college basketball. Not quite as good this year, but you do bring in Jacoby Gillespie, who's been able to do a bit of everything for the team, shooting darn near 40% from 3, 13.5 points, 3 assists, stealing that per contest, so he's been pretty rock solid there. You need a little bit more of some of these ancillary pieces. Sultan Miguel has been able to give you 9.5 points per game. Deshaun Harris-Smith just continues to be a flopperoonie after he was a very highly touted recruit, but Derek Queen along with Julian Reese are both able to give you about 8.5 rebounds per game. But I like the game of Trey Kaufman run. Needs to clean up those turnovers that we saw ALM in that game against Penn State. He had 7 turnovers in that game, but when this guy is clicking, this guy is clicking. About 6.5 boards, 18.5 points. He's able to step out there and pop it from 3. Currently shooting 60% from 3-point range. That's going to tail off as the season goes along, but Braden Smith, he just does a nice job of being able to flow this offense. 8.5 assists, 5 rebounds, 12 points per contest. Fletcher Lawyer off the ball. He's been able to give you double figures. He's a good 3-point shooter as well. And for Maryland, they've had great success in terms of being able to just pound teams with their defense, giving up fewer than 60 points in 3 of their last 5 games. But much of that has come at home. When Purdue has been at home, we've seen them knock off Alabama. We've seen them be able to get the job done time and time again. And their defense has been a rise to the occasion as well, giving up 61 points or fewer into their last 3 home games. So I do think that for Purdue, they do find a way to be able to slow down what has been a much improved Maryland offense. I do think that Kaufman run is able to hold up down low, so I did set Purdue as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. And with regards to this total, set mine at a 141.5. I'm in on the under. 755, 756 on the betting board. Oklahoma State hits the road. They're facing off against Seton Hall. This is a pick'em game with Seton Hall in some places a 1-point underdog. Totals anywhere between 132 to 132.5, and I set my total at a 135.5. I'm in on the over. You've got a Seton Hall team that's playing as slow as molasses, and a Seton Hall team that legitimately has been very good defensively in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. 13th in all of college basketball. Have an Oklahoma State team that is looking to play very up-tempo under Steve Lutz, and for Oklahoma State, defense has been a little bit more optional for this bunch outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I do think that the Seton Hall 3-point shooting is going to allow this team to play a little bit of higher scoring games. I'm not saying that this is going to be an amazing offense by any stretch of the imagination, but for Seton Hall, you've been able to have Chauncey Jenkins come in, supply the team with 13 points, 4.5 boards. He's shooting 43.5% from 3-point range. As a matter of fact, each of your top 3 scorers for the team are shooting at least 40% from 3-point range, with Dylan Adiwusu along with Isaiah Coleman both being able to do so, combining for about 19 points per game, combining for 3 steals per contest as well. Seton Hall does need to clean up those turnovers or turn the ball over 13 times per contest. Meanwhile, for Oklahoma State, it's really a whole is greater than some of its parts approach. Marcellus Avery, Bryce Thompson, these two guys give you between about 12.5 to 13 points per game. Both of these guys combine to shoot about 39% from 3 and both stand right around about 6'7", 6'8". Oklahoma State has kept things relatively clean, turned the ball over only about 10.5 times per game. Brandon Newman has been able to give you 8.5 points, 3.5 boards per contest, and Ontario Dean last year led all of college basketball in terms of steals per game. Not quite as dominant this year, but he is able to give you 2 steals per game. That should be able to allow some of those dead possessions of Seton Hall with the turnovers turn into instant offense for Oklahoma State. I think that is going to be a massive difference maker in this game. I do think that Oklahoma State going to be able to come up with those turnovers. I think that they're going to be able to turn that into nice, clean offense. This is an Oklahoma State team that certainly has given up their fair share of points, as they did hold Tulsa a few days ago to 55 points, but prior to that, they had given up 74-plus points in pretty much all of their games numbers thus far this season. Meanwhile, they've been able to get to at least 76 points, and I believe all but one of them as well. So, situation of something's got to give. I don't think that Seton is quite getting to 70, but I certainly think that they're going to exceed 65. But do think that Oklahoma State gets the job done in this one. Set Oklahoma State as 3.5-point favorite. We'll take them on this rather pick 'em line, and I'm in on the over semi-total 135.5. 7:55, 7:56 on the betting board. This will be another game that I write up as we've got a neutral court game between Vanderbilt and TCU, with TCU find themselves as a very slight underdog in this one. You're going to be getting Vanderbilt as a favorite of 1.5 to 2 points total on this game, between 151 to 151.5. I'm going to be writing up the under in this one. I set my total at a 145.5 with TCU. Just not a team that's playing as up-tempo as we've seen over the last few years, as prior to this season, it felt like in every single passing year, under the tutelage of Jamie Dixon, TCU was playing more and more up-tempo. They've had to slow that down this year because they don't really have that main go-to guys like you used to have with Miles up in the past few seasons and what have you. But with that said, this is a TCU unit that they've also been able to do an okay job with regards to their defense. Not great, not terrible. They've been able to generate some turnovers, and they have to face off against a Vanderbilt unit that has been able to do a really good job of protecting the ball. The joke for Vanderbilt was that everyone's a point guard for the team, but only 9.2 turnovers per game. AJ Hoggard has been that main facilitator, so he only have 4.5 assists, 11 points per game. It's a unit that as a whole, though, for Vanderbilt, they're shooting just 30.5% from three, and TCU in games played away from home, bottom 20 in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, shooting 24.9% from three-point. Frankie Collins is right now the lone guy, give you double figures for this unit, 12 points, 4 assists. He's been shooting only about 27.5% from three-point. Noah Reynolds has been able to dole it out with Collins. These two guys combined for about 8 assists per game. You've got Ernest Uday, who's been able to do a really good job down low, 1.7 blocks, 8.5 rebounds per game, but just not a lot of pop in terms of three-point shooting for TCU, shooting less than 30% as a collective in both home and road games. Jason Edwards on the flip side should be the top scorer in this game for Vanderbilt. He's been able to supply the team with 18 points, and it is a Vanderbilt team that, to their credit, they've been able to score quite a bit this season, but I mean, the defense has really stepped up as well. Now with 64 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games for TCU. Numbers are a little bit warped by the fact that they've had a few games go to overtime, but still, 72 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. I just feel like this is too high of a total in this sort of an ordeal, especially with this being a neutral court game that's going to be out there in Dickies Arena. That's in the great state of Texas, but even with that, going to be willing to lay with Vanderbilt, set them as a 3.5-point favorite, and in on the under, I'll be writing that up, set my total 145.5. 7:59, 7:60 on the betting board. It is Missouri, and they play with Kansas. Kansas, a 5.5 to a 6.5-point favorite. Total on this game, it is 154.5. This number open up more around a 4.5 to a 5.5, and as long as you're able to get a 6 or less, I'm still willing to lay it with Kansas. I did set them as a 6.5-point favorite for Kansas. I do think that they're going to bounce back after that less than savory loss that we saw against Creighton a few days ago, where they just couldn't get anything to go. You had DeJuan Harris, who I've been advocating for taking a few more shots. He took 24 field goal attempts in that game against Creighton. It's one thing to be taking a few more shots. It's another thing to be taking 20-plus field goal attempts. That should not be happening. Hunter Dickinson, no, I think is going to be able to win the battle down low. 14 points, 9 boards, a block. He's able to pop it from three-point against a Missouri team that, in their 2 years under Dennis Gates, they've been outside the top 275 in terms of rebound rate. I think that they'll be a little bit better this year. You've got a guy in Mark Mitchell who comes on over from Duke. He was a starter in their backcourt. He and Josh Gray have been able to combine for about 10 or so rebounds per game. Gray only gives you 3 points per game, but has been able to do a rock solid job down low. And for Missouri, their defense is a bit better with Caleb Grill now being out there in the lineup, 13.5 points. Currently shooting 55.5% from 3, but for Missouri, their numbers at home are very much warped right now because they have played against some of the lesser competition in all of college basketball at home, playing against the likes of Howard, Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Mississippi Valley State, what have you. That has been very much a lot of cupcakes for them. Now, the offense has still been very high-powered, 80-plus points in each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Kansas unit that they've been a little bit all over the place with regards to their defense. Sometimes it's been very, very good. Sometimes it's been less than savory, but I think the real X factor here is going to be what you're able to get out of KJ Adams. He's been a hit-or-miss player that's been averaging about 10 points per contest, like with Zeke Mayo. You know what you're going to be able to get out of him, 3.5 assists, 4.5 boards, 12 points per contest, but for this Kansas team, they keep things clean. Only turn the ball over about 9.5 times per game. When Missouri was at full force a few seasons ago, they were generating a bunch of steals, and they've been able to do a solid job of that this season. But I do think that with having a guy like Harris controlling things in the backcourt, that Missouri is going to have a few issues there. I think that Kansas finds a way to get the job done on the road. Did set my total at 154.5. You're at a 154 or less. I'm in on the over. I want to lay up to 6 with Kansas. 761, 762 on the betting board. Another game that I'll write up. Iona is playing us to St. Peter's. St. Peter's is between a pick 'em to a 1-point dog, and your total on this game, it is 131.5. I'm writing up St. Peter's. I set St. Peter's as a 5.5-point favorite. This Iona team is just absolutely miserable right now. For Iona, they are outside the top 320 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Bottom 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. You just really have no working offense for this team. DeJure Reeves, who comes over from Northern Colorado, he's been able to slide the team with 15.5 points per game. Adam Njai, he's a true freshman. He's been left to try to run the show at the point guard spot, and it's just not working out well for him right now. He's given out 3 assists or fewer in 3 of the last 4 games to be able to give you some nice scoring, but I mean, they're putting way too much on his plate, and they don't have a lot down low, especially with Clarence Rupert right now dealing with an injury, and that means that for St. Peter's, they should be able to control things down low, and that's big for Iona because they've actually been a top 75 team with regards to rebound rate. You've been able to Stephon Roberts be able to slide the team with 8.5 rebounds per game. They've been dealing with an injury themselves to Mohamed So. So has been someone that's been in the program for a few seasons and has dealt with a few injuries, but has returned for the last 2 games. He's been able to give the team 9.6 boards. Him being able to be back down low, that'll help out a St. Peter's team that uncharacteristically is outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but should rebound, and St. Peter's has also been uncharacteristically good from 3-point range as well. Marcus Randolph, 14.5 points, shooting 41.5% for 3. Armani Ziegler has been able to throw in their 38.5% 3-point shooting with 13 points per contest as well. So these guys have been able to do a rock solid job there. St. Peter's has dealt with a few injuries. Getting those guys back is so big. While Iona right now dealing with a lot of guys being out, not being able to take care of the ball whatsoever, and just getting gashed on defense as well. They've given up 83 plus points at 3 of their last 5 games, while the St. Peter's team, they're rounding back into form with their defense as well. 70 points or fewer in 4 out of their last 5 games. So I do like St. Peter's in this spot. I feel like they should be closer to about a 5.5-point favorite. I did set my total at a 131.5. So this is one of those games where I'm going to be in on, if we can get to a 132 or higher, the under, I'd rather have a 132 under rather than a 131 over, because St. Peter's always plays slowly right now. Just seeing 131.5 on the main openers, but at a 132 or higher, in on the under, and we'll take St. Peter's on this rather pick-em line. We'll be writing that up. 763, 764 on the betting board. Canisius is playing us to Siena. Siena is a 4 to 4.5 point road favorite. Total on this game between 134 to a 135. Don't want to go past the 4, but I'm going to be willing to play the 4 as I did set my line at a 4.5. For Canisius, they're starting to look a little bit better, and they do have a nice go-to scorer in Paul McMillan. McMillan has been able to give you 18.5 points per contest, throws in there 2 assists per game, but it is a Canisius team that's outside the top 275 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're turning the ball for 13.5 times per game. The one thing I can say for them, each of their top 5 scorers are shooting at least 75% of the free throw line, and as a whole, they're shooting actually 81.5% at the free throw line. So if it's a rather nip and tuck game, they are hitting their free throws, but you do have a Siena team that they're rounding into relatively good form as well. Shooting is collective about 35% from 3-point range. Sherry McNamara knows a little bit of something about playing the guard spot, and he's got a pair of guys, Major Freeman along with Justice Schultz, who have been able to combine for 29 points, 5.5 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. Now, they turn the ball over a little bit too much. These 2 guys combine for about 6 turnovers per game. Overall, the team is turning the ball over 13 times per contest, but they should be able to do a pretty rock-solid job with the versatility of Marcus Jackson. He's been able to give you 5.5 points. At just 6'2", he's been able to give you 5 boards per contest as well, and last season was a north of 40% 3-point shooter. You could use a little bit more down low than the 3 rebounds per game out of Peter Carey. Would like to see him become a little bit more of a guy that could be more of a force down low, but he has been able to give you about 2 blocks per contest. Michael Ojo just completely regressed from a season ago, but I do think that Siena still going to be able to control the glass, as Canisius really doesn't have a lot of size. Cam Pellalisi, who stands right around 6'5", he's been able to give the team about 5.5 or so rebounds per game. He's had to control things there, and Tanacopa has been able to give you 12.5 points per game, but it is a Canisius team that's really been getting gash from 3-point range. This is a Siena team that they are very much looking to be able to give you quite a bit from the outside. For Canisius, just a team that in general is not flowing very good offense whatsoever, and I do think that in this ordeal, Canisius not going to be able to give you a whole heck of a lot down low either. So this is one of those games where I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4 with Siena, and then I did set my total 138. It's a Siena team that's playing a little bit more slowly, but again, with how bad the Canisius defense has been, and me thinking that there's a chance that this goes to some late game fouling in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Siena. 765, 766 on the betting board. It is Merrimack, and the Merrymen are on the road against Niagara. Niagara finds themselves as 2.0 underdogs, and total on this game is 126. The irony here is that Niagara has actually been a little bit better road team rather than the home team last 2 seasons, but I'm going to be willing to take Niagara in this spot. I set them as a very slim 1-point favorite. I mean, it's a team in Merrimack that always does a great job of generating turnovers, number 1 in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Last year, one of the top teams in all of college basketball in that regard as well. And they do have the best player in this game. Adam Clark has been able to supply for Merrimack 20 points, 4 boards, 4.5 assists, 2.5 steals per game, but it's a Merrimack team that's shooting 27.5% from 3, 38.5% from the floor. You've got Devon Savage along Sean Trumper, who both been able to give you about 9 or so points per game. And Trumper, to his credit, he's able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. Brian Entabino has been rock solid as well. But Aldime Aldudun, he's been able to give you about 6 boards, 13 points per contest for a Niagara team that they just seem to find 3-point shooting on trees. I don't know how they do it, but they lose darn near everyone from seasons ago. But they bring in Jahari Williamson from Valparaiso. He's been able to shoot 44.9% from 3-point range. You've been able to get really good production down low out of Jalen Martinez, who's now been able to pop it a little bit from 3-point range. The Omaha transfer and Jaden Marshall, 9.5 points per contest. He's shooting about 32% from 3-point range for a Niagara team that does a relatively solid job keeping things clean, about 11.5 turnovers per game. So they've been able to flow some good offense. They've been dealing with a few injuries in the backcourt, the main one being Josiah Davis, guy that comes in from Tennessee Tech. He's been missing for the last 6 games, but even without him, they've been able to do a solid job with regards to that offense. And even though Merrimack, I think that they're going to be able to win the turnover battle, they haven't been quite as good on defense as they have been in the past. 68-plus points given up in 4 of their last 5 games. This is a Niagara team that's stepping on up a little bit on defense, but they're able to hit some threes. And the way that you beat this Merrimack team, you just take care of the ball, and then you find some good open looks from 3. So I did set my total at a 127. I'm just barely in on the over. I think that both teams can get past 60. I do like Niagara on the money line. Made them the 1-point home favorite. 767, 768 on the betting board. Central Florida plays us to Tarleton State. Tarleton State a 23.5 to a 25-point underdog. Total on this game between 135 to 135.5. Set my line at 25.5. I'm willing to lay with Central Florida, as right now you've got a Tarleton State team that's in the bottom 5 nationally in terms of taking care of the ball. They're turning the ball over north of 20 times per game. This team was expecting Freddie Hicks to be out there and being able to supply for this unit. That has not been able to happen. They had a few other guys that transferred in from other bigger conferences. Like you've got a guy in Datwan Grimes who began his career over at Baylor. He has not been able to get out there on the floor either. So that has been a big issue. They just finally got out there for his first game of the season, Kenton Bairstow. So that might be a little bit of an upside guy. They decided to activate him as a freshman. He had 9 points in his first game out. But I mean, they've been dealing with an injury as well to Ronnie Harrison. He's been missing for a few games. Should be good to go in this one. 11.5 points, 4 boards per contest. But I mean, the main guy that they're looking to right now has been the 17.5 points and 5 rebounds per game out of Boo Boo Benjamin, who's been able to shoot 46% from 3-point range. Like, Tarleton State as a whole, they're shooting 37% from 3. It just doesn't do any good when you commit 21 turnovers to be able to get that 3-point shooting percentage. Chris Mpakpa, he's been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game down low, and he's really the lone guy other than Boo Boo Benjamin that's able to give you any sort of rebounding whatsoever. Central Florida is taking a little bit of a drop off with regards to their rebounding from a season ago, but Keyshawn Hall, who comes over from George Mason, he's a very versatile guy that's able to fill up the stat sheet. 15.5 points, 2.5 assists, 7 boards. Last year shot 35.5% from 3. That's dipped to about 25% this season. But you've got Darius Johnson, who's right now generating 3 steals per game. That's the top 5 mark in all of college basketball, shooting 47% from 3, 16 points per game. They've been dealing with a little bit of an injury down low to Mustafa Thiam. He's a former top 75 freshman recruit that was banged up for a game or two, but now they've got him back in the fold at 7'2". He should be able to win that battle down low. Central Florida's done a relatively solid job taking care of the ball with only 12 turnovers per game. Jordan Ivy Curry really brings that backcourt together, and Tarleton State, the name of their game is being able to generate turnovers. I think that Central Florida takes care of the ball, and that takes out of hand the pretty much lone strength that Tarleton State has. I do think that Central Florida is going to be able to find a lot of holes in a Tarleton State defense that, against T1 competition, has been less than savory. Fully recognize that this has also been an offense that has scored 61 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games against T1 competition, but have a Central Florida team that has really been lighting it up on offense as well. I think that they're going to carve up this Tarleton State defense. So my total 141.5. I'm in on the over, and I'm going to lay up to 25 with Central Florida. 769, 770 on the betting board. It is Fairfield on the road against Mount St. Mary's. Mount St. Mary's is a 1.5 to a 2-point favorite. Totals between 136.5 to a 137. I set my line at 2.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the deuce. For Fairfield, you just don't have a lot down low for this team, and that's where I think that Mount St. Mary's is going to be able to win the battle. When Mount St. Mary's was making their NCAA tournament runs a few seasons ago, it was because they had a lot of guys like Nana Akpu, like Jefferson, and guys like that down low. And now you've got three guys that are able to give you at least 6.5 rebounds per game. Dola Edbayo, Jory Cordelia, along Terrell Arndt. They're not necessarily amazing scorers, but all three guys between 9.5 to 11.5 points per contest. Dallas Hobbs has been your main scorer. In the backcourt, Seton 3.5 assists, 14 points per contest. It is a Mount St. Mary's team that is in the bottom 15 all of college basketball in terms of ball security. They're turning the ball over north of 16 times per contest. For this Fairfield team, they've been able to have, I guess you could call it, one main guy in Prophet Johnson, 10.5 points, 6.5 boards, 2 steals, 3 assists per contest, but this team is shooting just 29% from 3. They take care of the ball. They are only turning the ball over about 10 times per contest, but they're one of the worst rebound rate teams in all of college basketball because outside of Johnson, you've got one other player that gives you north of 3.4 rebounds per game, and the right around about 4.8 boards, 9.5 points per game of Peyton Smith, who at 6'10" has been relatively okay down low, but with not a lot from the outside. Lewis Bleachmore has been able to give you 40% three-point shooting, but he's not really able to create a lot off the ball. Jamie Burgeons has been able to give you 9 points per contest as well. Comes in from Drexel. He's been able to give you a little bit of three-point shooting as well, but once again, one-trick pony for a Fairfield team that is really not locking down with regards to the defense in front of things as well. They've now given up 74+ in 3 out of their last 4 games. I do think that Mount St. Mary's is going to be able to do a solid job controlling this game, being able to play a little bit more soundly on defense, and I do think that for Mount St. Mary's, they control the glass. So did set my total at 140.5. Mount St. Mary's has been playing a little bit more up and down recently. This is a Fairfield team that's looking to get back to their roots a little bit more of playing some solid defense, but Mount St. Mary's, I do think that they're going to be able to find some open looks from 3-point range, and for the Mount, I do think that with them being at home, that offense is going to be going northward, and they're going to be able to keep things more clean. So in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to a deuce here with Mount St. Mary's, 771, 772 on the betting board. You have Manhattan, and they're going to be playing up some Marist. Marist is a favorite of 1.5 to 2 points. Totals between 137 to 137.5. I set Manhattan as a 1.5 point favorite. I like them outright on the money line. John Gallagher doing a really good job with this program, and he has found himself a nice point guard in Jaden Winston. Winston, not necessarily like a dynamo scorer or anything like that, but about 10 points, 4.5 assists, shooting 30% per 3, but it's generating about a steal and a half per contest as well. Going against the Marist team that's actually been pretty solid with their 3-point shooting. They're shooting as a collective 34.5% from 3. Your top 2 guys both shooting north of 41.5% from distance. Jackson Price, 6'8" combo player, 12 points, 4.5 boards per contest. Meanwhile, you've got a guy that is really one of the better mid-major scorers that you're going to find in Josh Passarelli. 18 points, 2.5 assists, shooting 45% from 3-point range. And said this is also a unit that they aren't what they have been in the interior and on the post recently as well. They don't have a single guy that's able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game, but able to get about 4.5 boards, 6.5 points per game of Jaden Daughtry, who's got a little bit of versatility at 6'6". That's where Will Snyder comes in for Manhattan at 6'8" size, being able to give you 6.5 boards, 15 points per game, I think is going to be big. And then old Bender, Shaquille Bender, has been able to supply the team with 13 points per game. I've seen a big drop off in his 3-point shooting from a season ago. Last year shot 34% from 3. This year that's down to about 21% from distance. Do think that should be going northward as the season goes along, and just game in and game out, it feels like this is a Manhattan team that is improving with their overall play. Outside of Snyder, you don't have that one guy that's necessarily amazing down low, but good versatility out of Wesley Robinson at 6'7". He's come in from the non-D1 ranks and has been able to supply the team with 8 points, 6 boards, and assists and a half per contest. Career 43% 3-point shooter. I think the Manhattan has just enough to be able to get the job done against a Marist team that last year, they were one of the top defenses in all of college basketball. They were a top 35 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are well outside the top 125 this season, and you've got a Manhattan team that I think is going to be able to do a good job of being able to guard the interior, and on top of that, with regards to their 3-point shooting defense, this is a Manhattan team that they should be seeing things go northward compared to right now giving up about 36.5% from 3-point range, but Marist, they themselves on the road allowing opponents to shoot 39% from 3-point range. Did set my total 135.5. I do think that the defense sticks northward for both of these teams. Neither team plays really up-tempo, so in on the under, and I do like Manhattan outright on the money line. 773, 774 on the betting board. Fort Wayne plays host to Robert Morris. Old Bobby Morris is a 9-point underdog. Total is 147, and did set my total 149.5. I'm in on the over. Big reason why is that Robert Morris now has their top scorer in Cam Woods back. Woods, when he was at North Carolina A&T 2 seasons ago, he was able to supply that team with 17+ points per contest, so love what he's able to bring to the table in terms of his backcourt, but even with that, with Fort Wayne, I think that they're going to be a little bit ticked off from that loss a few days ago to Detroit. I did set them as an 11.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay it. Fort Wayne, one of the most clean offenses in all of college basketball. Only turn the ball over 9.3 times per game. They shoot 36.5% from three-point range. You know what you're going to get out of Rashid Bello, 3 assists, 14-plus points per contest, but Corey Hadnot, he has come in, and he's been able to give the team north of 40% three-point shooting, 11 points per contest, and they've got a guy that's able to bang down low, and Eric Mulder is able to give you 8 rebounds per game. Now, Alvaro Folguerius, he has been very good coming in from the country of Spain for Robert Morris, 10 points, 10.5 boards, 2 assists per contest, so love his overall versatility, but outside that, you don't necessarily have a ton down low for this Robert Morris team. They've been dealing with a few injuries as well, as they just have not been able to get one of their main guys in Justice Williams from a season ago out there on the court. I was mentioning it with Cam Woods. He's already missed 5 games this far this season, and in his last game back against Youngstown State, looked like he finally found his sea legs once again with 14 points, 5 assists, but also has had 14 turnovers since coming back as well, so he's not necessarily in rhythm. That should allow a Fort Wayne team that last year was a top 50 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis to be able to turn defense into offense. This is also a Robert Morris team that is currently about 295th in all of college basketball in terms of three-point shooting percentage, and Cam Woods, even though he's able to do a pretty rock-solid job in terms of being able to facilitate offense, not as if he's some sort of amazing three-point shooter. Additionally, with this Robert Morris team, they give it up quite a bit from three-point range as well. On the road, they're allowing opponents to shoot 37.5% from three-point range. It's a IPFW team, Fort Wayne team, that they are outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage as well. Fort Wayne really looking to crank it up tempo. I think that they're going to have success in doing so. So I did set my total at 149.5. I'm in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 11 points with Fort Wayne. 775, 776 on the betting board. It is Quinnipiac playing out to Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart does find themselves as an underdog of 4 points total on this game. You're going to be getting it at a 146, and I did set my line at 7.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Quinnipiac. Now for Quinnipiac, the big question for this team is whether or not you're going to be able to get back your main point guard in Savion Lewis. He has not played the last 2 games, and I've handicapped him out for this one. Even if he does play, he's probably not going to be 100%. I recall the comments of his coach, and Tom Bakura, saying that he's hoping that he's all good to go for the game next week against Holy Cross, and I take him at his word there. So I'm thinking that his nearly 6 assists per contest going to be out of the fold, but this team should still be able to win the battle down low. You've got Amari Monroe along with Paul Otinho, who will be able to combine for about 14.5 to 15 rebounds per game. Monroe has been very versatile, being able to give the team 13.5 points per game, 2.5 steals per game as well at 6'7". He last year shot in the mid-30s from three-point range. That has tapered off to less than 25% from three-point range this season, but been able to get 36% three-point shooting, 10 points, 4 boards out of Caden Bennett as well. It is a Quinnipiac team that they are some of the biggest candidates for positive regression because they're shooting 24.8% from three-point range right now. You got a Sacred Heart team that has been able to get back Bryce Johnson, who's been able to do a pretty rock-solid job down low for the team. 6 boards, 8 points per game. He's able to pop it from 3. That doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3, but he's able to give you some 3-point attempts. Makai Connor has been able to do a solid job, give you about 4 assists per contest, but I was just expecting Aiden Carpenter over the last few seasons to be able to ascend for the team, and it just hasn't happened. So with a few injuries this season as well. 9.5 points per game, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. It's nothing awful, but it's really nothing amazing. It is a bunch that as a whole for Sacred Heart is shooting about 38.5% from three-point range, going up against Quinnipiac team as well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but for Quinnipiac at home, they're allowing opponents to shoot just 26% from three-point range, so they've been able to put the clamps down there. It's a Sacred Heart unit that has had a very difficult time guarding the three-point shot away from home at 39% as well. When he's been out there, Anquan Hill supplied the team with 13.5 points per game, but as he has come back in the full, Tanner Thomas, as we deal with injury, he's one of their top guys who last season was able to give the team 11 points per contest, but again, last year was dealing with injury as well for Sacred Heart. I just think that there's a little bit too much to guard with this Quinnipiac team, and Quinnipiac should be seeing that three-point shooting going northward. So, did semi total 151.5. Quinnipiac, top 100 team in terms of total possession per game. Under Anthony Latina, Sacred Heart is looking to run it as well. So, in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Quinnipiac. 777, 778 on the betting board. It is SIU Edwardsville playing us Ball State. Ball State, a 2 to 2.5 point underdog total on this game. It is 136, and with SIU Edwardsville, I did set them as a 2-point favorite at 2.5. That becomes my buy point on Ball State. It's a Ball State unit that does bring back Peyton Sparks, who 2 seasons ago he was averaging 8+ rebounds per game for this program, went on over to Indiana and just found absolutely no playing time whatsoever at Indiana, not to anyone's surprise, but that's it for SIU Edwardsville. It's been a team that has been built around Rayshawn Taylor, who's been able to average at least 13 points per game for now 4 straight seasons. He's given the team 5 boards, 6 assists, 2 steals per contest, only shooting about 32% from three-point range. That's a career low for him, but You've got Ring Maleth, who's been able to give you about 6 boards per contest as well, but I think that the versatility of Mikey Pearson Jr., 6'8" combo player, last year for Ball State shot 36% from 3, down to about 25% this season, but should be going northward, is going to be able to keep this team lively, 11.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. And then you've got Sparks, who I mentioned before, has really struggled coming in out of the gates, as he's only been able to give this unit in that neighborhood of about 8 points, 5 rebounds per game. I think that he's going to be able to get more acclimated to this offense as the season goes along, but you've got a nice off-the-ball scorer in Justine Gorosito, who's been able to shoot north of 45% from three-point range, supplying the team with 9.5 points per game. He's given the team 9+ points each of the last 5 games. After a little bit of a slow start to the season, he's been able to find his way. And then you've got Ethan Britton Watts, who's rolling out some nice offense, comes in from the Patriot League, 7.5 points, 3 boards, 2.5 assists, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range for a Ball State team that last year they were a good three-point shooting team. That's down to about 30% this season. I think that they're doing for a little bit of positivity there. But for Ball State, even though their three-point shooting percentage has gotten off to a little bit of a, shall we say, rough patch to begin the season, their defense has been a little bit better as well. Ball State on the road is allowing opponents just 26% from three-point range. Now, I do think that that's going to be going northward a little bit, but outside of Rayshawn Taylor, you don't necessarily have a lot of guys who are going to light you up. You've been able to get about 9 points per contest. The junior college transfer Desmond Polk, who's been able to do a relatively solid job, but for SIU Edwardsville, they themselves shooting about 30% from 3, shooting just 61.5% of the free throw line as well, which is why I do think that that number very significant on the 2. I set my number at 2, so being able to get a 2.5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Ball State. And with regards to the total, I did set mine at a 136. So if we can get to a 136.5 or higher, in on the under 135.5 or less, in on the over 779, 780 on the betting board. Texas Tech and Texas A&M doing battle on a neutral court, as right now with Texas Tech, you're finding them as the very slim favorite of 1 to 2 points. Total on this game anywhere between 141.5 to 142, and this is going to be happening in the great state of Texas over at Dickies Arena. So a pretty true neutral court here in this one. And with Texas Tech, I did set them as a 1.5 point favorite, mostly seeing ones out there. And between a 1 to a 2, I'd rather lay the 1 with Texas Tech rather than take 2 with Texas A&M, because with A&M, this team can be very Jekyll and Hyde with regards to their outside shooting. Now, they do a nice job on the glass. Number 1 team with regards to offensive rebound rate in all of college basketball last season. But for Texas A&M, you just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of this backcourt night in and night out, even with Wade Taylor being able to give you 16 points per contest, even with Zarique Phillips throwing in their 13 points, 2.5 assists. For Taylor, he gives you about 4.5 assists per contest, but the team as a whole shooting 29% from three-point range. So have those rock-solid rebounders, Anderson Garcia, 8 boards per contest. You've been able to have Henry Coleman and Solomon Washington combined for a little bit over 12 rebounds per game, but even with Texas Tech, deal with that injury to JT Toppin, kept him out in the team's last game, probably going to keep him out for this one, and even if he does play, he's going to be a little bit limited. You saw the man who's so nice that they named him twice, Frederico, who's been able to give you 4 boards per contest. They're going to be without Devin Cambridge for the rest of the season, but you've got a really nice backcourt that includes a nice go-to scorer in Chance McMillan, who's been able to give you 15 points per game, currently shooting north of 50% for three-point range. That should be going southward a little bit, but Darion Williams, I think, is going to be the most versatile player in this game. He had 6'6", is a little bit of a point forward, 17 points, 6 boards, 4.5 assists. Last year shot 46% from three-point range. That's down to about 30% thus far this season, but for Texas Tech, they've also done a really good job of being able to guard the interior as well. So the way that you beat them is by being able to hit your shots from the outside. Texas Tech allowing opponents to shoot 35% from three-point range. That's something that A&M just simply does not do. Now, conversely, A&M does a good job guarding the three-point line. They allow opponents to shoot just 28% from three-point range. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give. You've got a pair of teams that are looking to play a little bit more fast than they have in the past, but they're not looking to play necessarily at a breakneck pace. But I did set my total 143.5. I do think that Texas Tech, with their north of 40% three-point shooting, they do find a way. Kerwin Walton, he's a nice off-the-ball scorer. I do think that the overall versatility of Texas Tech, even though they might lose the battle on glass, going to be able to win out in the spot against a Texas Tech team that has been a little bit all over the place, but has been very much a dynamo with their offense, with getting at least 75 points in each of the last 5 games for Tech. Meanwhile, Texas A&M, very much an up-and-down, streaky sort of team that feels like that they allow some teams that shouldn't hang in there with them. So I'm going to be willing to take Texas Tech, willing to lay up to a point with them, and with regards to the total, set mine at a 143.5, so I'm in on the over. 781, 782, another game that I'm going to be writing up. Texas State, they are playing us, so Rice. We give our O to Lane Kiffin, go Owls, that's Rice, a 3.5 point underdog, totals between 133 to 134, willing to lay up to 6 with Texas State. I'm going to be writing them up. I am willing to lay the number. Now, Rice has actually been a top 50 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Rice also outside the top 300 in terms of ball security. They've been turning the ball over north of 14 times per contest, and they just don't have that go-to scorer on this roster. You've got Trey Barneau, who's been the main facilitator with about 4 assists, 15 points per game, but also 3.5 turnovers per game. Caden Boom Boom Powell has been pretty solid down low. He comes in from Wyoming. He's been able to give the team 8 rebounds per game and a lot of offensive rebounds as well. But for Texas State right now, they're shooting 37.5% from three-point range. Caden Gums, I think, is going to be the best overall offensive piece in this game. 15 points, 2 steals, 4 boards, shooting north of 40% from three-point range. This has been a team that has been a little bit banged up throughout the season, as Tyrell Morgan has already missed a few games this season, but he's all good to go for this one. He's given the team 6+ boards in each of the last 4 games and has good versatility. 3 assists, a block and a half, a steal and a half, 12 points per contest, all while shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. You've got off the ball Drew Drynan, who's been able to shoot north of 40% from three-point range. They just get back now Colton Benson as well, the transfer from Army. He had 11 points in his first action of the season. And for Rice, you've got Alan Usanovic, who's back from a season ago, shooting 40% from 3, giving 9 points per contest. But it's a team as a whole. They're shooting about 32% from three-point range. They've been slowing things down a little bit, but outside their main starting 5, you don't necessarily have a ton of production. Trey Patterson, who comes in from Villanova, has been able to give you about 5 or so rebounds per game. But I look at this circumstance, I do think that Texas State finds a way to get the job done, as their defense is back in full force. 65 points or fewer allowed in each of their last 3 games, and this is a Rice team that they themselves have been just very up and down in terms of their offense. I do think that Texas State is really able to bludgeon them in this one. I did set my total at 138.5, as I do think that for Texas State, they're going to be able to find some nice looks from three-point range. They've shot it really well from three-point range at home, so I'm in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Texas State up to 6 points. 783, 784 on the betting board. Memphis is playing us Arkansas State. Arkansas State, pretty sizable underdog of 14 points. Your total on this game, it is 153, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Memphis. Memphis has been a good cover team all season long. It is an Arkansas State team that over the last 2 seasons, with regards to their offensive prowess, it's been much different away from home rather than at home. And for this Memphis team, I just believe that they're one of the more supremely talented teams in all of college basketball. So I'm going to be willing to lay this number for Arkansas State. You got Taron Todd in the backcourt, who's been able to do a nice job being able to supply the team with 13 points per game. And Arkansas State has a few guys that do transfer in from the SEC. Their main rebounder and rush sheet, Marshall, he's been able to do a solid job. Marshall has come in, giving the team 7 boards, a block per contest. But it's also an Arkansas State team that's currently shooting 30% from three-point range with 12.5 turnovers per game. Memphis always has their woes with regards to being able to take care of the ball, but it's also a Memphis unit that's currently shooting 45.5% from three-point range. Now, is that going to taper off? Absolutely it is. Going into their last game that they played against Louisiana Tech, they were quite literally shooting 55% from three-point range at home, but they're going to be, when it's all said and done, one of the best three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. And they go up against an Arkansas State team that's much improved with regards to their defense from where they were 8 seasons ago, but this is still an Arkansas State team that they should see a little bit of regression with their three-point shooting defense as well. They've been a little bit fortunate that they have allowed opponents to shoot 26.7% from three-point range when they've been on the road. So I think that you're getting sort of 2 things that are in for a little bit of negative regression in terms of the three-point shooting of Memphis and the three-point shooting defense of Arkansas State, and you get something in the middle. But we've got Tyrese Hunter on the side of Memphis, 3.5 assists, 2 steals, 16.5 points per game. And PJ Haggerty has been one of the best scorers in all of college basketball, 6 boards, 3.5 assists, 2 steals, 22 points per contest. And then you've got the guys down low, Nick Jourdain, Dane Janja, Musa Cisse. I'll give you between about 5 to 6 rebounds per game. That's going to be able to dominate an Arkansas State team that has that Kobe Julian doing a solid job, giving you a double-figure amount of points, about 5 rebounds per game. Terrence Ford Jr., he's able to give out about 3 assists per contest as well, but also 3 turnovers per game as well. And this is just a Memphis team that has been able to get after it on offense, but defensively they've been much improved as well. Give it up 71 or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games, considering they play at one of the more breakneck paces in all of college basketball. That's relatively impressive, and I do think that they take it to Arkansas State. I think that they're going to continue to can some threes. So I did set my total at 155. I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 16.5 with Memphis. 785, 786 on the betting board. It is Jacksonville State on the road against South Alabama. South Alabama, a 2 to 2.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 133.5 to a 134. So Jacksonville State as a 1.5 point favorite. I like Jacksonville State outright on the money line. This is South Alabama team that it just feels like it's a band of misfit pieces right now. You've got Miles Corey, who's been really good for the team. He's been able to supply the team with 19.5 points per contest. He's right now giving out 4.5 assists, 1.5 steals per game for a team that shoots 32.5% from 3. And to their credit, they don't turn the ball over a lot. South Alabama only turned the ball over about 9.5 times per game. But for South Alabama, even though the offense looks like it's clicking and it's firing on all cylinders, this is a defense that's leaving quite a bit of something to be desired. 290th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage bench, allowing opponents to shoot 37% from three-point range. I know you really don't have a ton down low. You got Barry Dunning Jr. comes on over from the SEC. He's able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. And John Broome, not Johnny Broome, John Broome, he's been able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game as well. But for Jacksonville State, you've got Michael Hoagie, who's been a do-it-all guy coming over from St. Peter's. 10.5 points, 8.5 boards. Over at St. Peter's last year, he was able to give you darn near a block per contest as well at 6'7", just a really nice force multiplier. And then Jerron Pierre has been a top 5 player in all of college basketball in terms of overall scoring this year. 24.5 points, 5 boards, 4.5 assists on 40% three-point shooting, something that Jacksonville State hasn't had before. And I was talking about how South Alabama's taking care of the ball. Jacksonville State's taking even better care of the ball. They're turning the ball over just 9 times per contest. I think you throw in there Matthew Nicholson being able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. Marcellus Brigham is able to give you 6 boards per contest. This team has so much depth in the backcourt now. Jayo Otika, who a few seasons ago was over at Marist, shooting north of 40% from three-point range with 15 plus points per contest. He's giving you more like 10 points per contest, but is back to shooting 40 plus percent from three-point range. Even though South Alabama is starting to run some better offense, this is a Jacksonville State team that they themselves have been able to improve on that front. And Jacksonville State just flat out the better defense. I recognize that it's not quite where it has been in past years right now for Jacksonville State in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, about 229th in all of college basketball, but you got a South Alabama unit that been very much getting bludgeoned around the perimeter. I do think that Jacksonville State, with having Pierre being able to pop it from three-point range, they find a way to be able to get the job done in this circumstance in a game where you got two pretty rock-solid defenses that I think are going to go at it, but I think that you get just enough made threes to be able to go over on this total. I set my total 135.5 and on the over. I do like Jacksonville State outright on the money line. 787, 788 on the betting board. It is Murray State playing against the Southeast Missouri State. Southeast Missouri State, a 16-point dog total on this game between 142 to a 142.5. Set my line at 15. I'm going to be won't take the 16 with Southeast Missouri State. It is a Southeast Missouri State team that is in quite a bit of transition. It has been all sorts of rocky for them over the last few seasons ever since they made that run to the NCAA tournament. That said, I do like what Teddy Washington Jr. brings to the table. He comes in from Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and he has been able to do it all. 2.5 assists, 6.5 boards, 17 points per game. Only shooting about 31% from three-point range, but overall has been the main leader for this team. Now down low for Southeast Missouri State, you're going to need to get a little bit more than just Washington being able to supply the team with rebounds, as somebody else is giving you north of 3.5 rebounds per game, but it's not like you've got a Murray State team that's necessarily batting down the hatches down low. K'Ron Lindsey, who he was the top rebounder over at Georgia a few seasons ago as a freshman before he transferred out of the program. He's been rock solid, about 9.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, and then E.J. Ferguson, he just does a bit of everything, 13 points, 6 boards, currently shooting 53% from three-point range. And Murray State as a whole, they're shooting 40% from the outside. I do think that that's going to be tapering off a little bit, and we saw it with Murray State last season. They were a very efficient offense, and they were a very inefficient defense, and Murray State right now checking in about 138th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They've been able to shore that up a little bit with Jacoby Wood doing a good job on the defensive side of things, along with 6 assists per game, but he has been giving out about 3.5 turnovers per game as well. You've got Terrence Harcum, who's been able to shoot north of 40% from 3, 13 points per contest, like what he's able to bring to the table as well, but for Southeast Missouri State, having back Rob Martin, assist to turnover ratio north of 3. I do think that Southeast Missouri State just does enough to be able to hold in this game. Fully recognize that the defense has been a little bit less than savory, but you do have a Murray State team that's a little bit more of a low-tempo team, so I do think that that's going to keep things a little bit more snug in this one. I do think that even with that lower tempo, that you're going to get really good executed offense in this game. Did set my total at 145, so I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to take the 16 here with Southeast Missouri State. 789, 790 on the betting board. Another game that'll right up. Illinois, Chicago, UIC, they're going to be playing against Dartmouth. Dartmouth is an 8.5 to a 9.5 point underdog. Totals between 152.5 to 153. Now, Illinois, Chicago, outside the top 325 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but Dartmouth outside the top 270 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. I set my total at 145. I'm going to be in on this total under, and I'm going to be writing that up for UIC. I do think that the defense is going to improve a little bit as the season goes along. Rob Hassan is a guy that knows what he's doing in terms of coaching, and he has brought in some really nice three-point shooting, and additionally, they should be able to control the boards in this game as well. I set UIC as a 13-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. As for Dartmouth, you've got Romello Melrith, hopefully I said that correctly, giving you about 5.5 or so rebounds per game, but Sasa Sini, he has been able to supply this team with 10 rebounds per game, and Brandon Mitchell-Day, the main returner for the Dartmouth team, he's dealt with a little bit of injury, and he's been okay because he's had to stuff the stat sheet for the team. 10 points, 5 boards, 3 assists per contest, so he's had to be a little bit here, a little bit there. Kate Haskins, he's been able to shoot 43% 43% from three. He's been the main scorer with about 14 points per game. And Ryan Cornish, after he had just a terrible year last year, he's been able to supply the team with 14 points per game as well. But this is a UIC team that I think that they're going to be able to pump it in there from three-point range themselves. They bring in Ahmad Henderson, the second. He was over at Niagara last season, 4 assists, steal and a half, 11.5 points per contest. But main scorer in the backcourt is Javon Jackson, who's been able to supply 4 assists, 11.5 points, shooting about 37% from three-point range. This is a UIC team that isn't amazing from three-point range, but they do have some good three-point shooters in general on this team, shooting about 36% from three-point range. You've been able to get about 42% three-point shooting out of Tyon Freeman, who's come over from UAB. He's been able to supply the team with 9.5 points per game, and that's a lot of this UIC team. Whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Other than Siena, who's giving you about 12.5 points per game, you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 11.5 points per game, but outside of Siena, you pretty much have 5 to 6 pieces in the backcourt that give you between about 8.5 to 11.5 points per contest. I think that that's going to be big. UIC is turning the ball over about 13.5 times per game, but you also have a Dartmouth team that's one of the worst teams in all of college basketball, being able to generate turnovers. It is a Dartmouth team that has been held to 69 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games, and it's a UIC team that I do think that they're going to be able to bump things up a little bit more with their defense and control things down low. So I'm going to be writing up the under of the UIC, willing to lay up to 12.5 with them, 791, 792 on the betting board. It is Texas, and they are back to playing host to UConn. UConn is a 1.5 to a 2-point underdog. The odds game is between 140.5 to a 142, and made Texas is a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the small number. Getting back Trayvon Mark, I thought was so big for this Texas team, and I think that they're going to be able to do a solid job down low. With Alex Caravan right now dealing with injury, and if he does go for UConn, he is going to be very much hobbled in this game. And that should allow this Texas team to be able to have Caden Shedrick be able to do a solid job in the post. Now, I like what I'm seeing out of Taurus Reed. Taurus Reed has been able to come in, give the team 8.5 boards, 11 points per contest. Not going to be a guy that really attacks from the outside or anything like that, but does give you a block and a half per game, and felt like the hate in the offseason went a little bit too far on Arthur Kaluma. Kaluma has been able to shoot 39% for 3. Nice inside-out player, 13.5 points, 8 boards, 2.5 assists, steal per contest. Doing a nice job stuffing the stat sheet, while Julian Larry, he's come in for Texas, and he's been able to give them about 3.5 assists per game. I thought that they were going to get a little bit more out of the Indiana State transfers. Jason Kent just has not been able to stay healthy. He's missed the last 4 games for the team, but you've also got one of the best freshmen in all of college basketball, Trey Johnson, 20.5 points, shooting 44.5% from 3-point shot. On the flip side, UConn has had a pretty solid freshman in their own, and Liam McNeely, who's been able to supply for the team 13 points, 5.5 boards. He's shooting right around about 34% for 3. And UConn's really not turning the ball over a lot. I mean, Hassan Diarra has not been like knocking your socks off or anything like that, but 8 points, 5 assists while turning the ball over 2 times for contest. That will get the job done, but they need a bit more out of Aiden Mahaney, especially with Caravan deal with injury. For Mahaney, he's only been able to give the team 5.5 points per contest after he was a rock-solid scorer over at St. Mary's. We've seen a little bit more of that the last 2 games, a combined 20 points in about 17 minutes per contest. So, I mean, he's been looking a little bit better there, but in the end, I do think that Texas has a little bit too much. It's a ruckus environment, and especially after how the football game went on Saturday, I think that on Sunday they're going to be very fired up for this one, and to the credit of Texas, one of the better defensive teams in all of college basketball. You've got a UConn team that's starting to ascend a little bit more offensively, but we've seen them away from stores get gashed defensively. So this is an interesting circumstance with the total. I set mine at a 142.5. I do think that Texas is going to be able to find some nice free-flowing offense in this one. I'm going to go over, and I'm going to lay it up to 2 with Texas. 793, 794 on the betting board. Another game that I'll write up. UCLA on the road against Oregon. Oregon at 3.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 141, and with Oregon, made them a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take 3+ here with UCLA, and I'm going to be writing up the under. I set my total at 134.5. UCLA outside the top 260 in terms of total possessions per game, and numero uno in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This UCLA team has been pounding teams into oblivion with regards to their defense. Tyler Bilodeau, he's a do-it-all 6'9" guy that comes from the state of Oregon. Last year, he was over at Oregon State, shooting 39% for 3, 14 points, 6 boards per contest. Now, this needs to be thrown in there with UCLA. In games played away from home, entering into Saturday, 15th fewest points per possession of any team in all of college basketball, but we got Sebastian Mack, who's logging for the team about 10.5 points per contest. The Daily Show, Eric Daly, 5.5 boards, steal and a half, 11.5 points per game, shooting 40% from 3-point range. As a whole, UCLA shooting about 32.5% from distance, leaving something to be desired there, but Kobe Johnson, even though he's not giving you a lot of points, he's doing everything else. 7 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists, 2.5 steals per contest. Meanwhile, for Oregon, they've done a nice job being able to protect the ball. So you've got a UCLA team that generates a bunch of turnovers, an Oregon team that's only turned the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. Like what I'm seeing in the backcourt from Jackson Shellstead, 3.5 assists, 11.5 points per game. Really not popping it from 3-point range as Oregon as a whole. They shoot about 33% from 3. We saw them pick up their effort effort defensively against USC, holding them to 60 points. Nate Biddle, he's capable of popping threes, doesn't necessarily do so well, but he's been logging for the team about 9 boards, 13.5 points per game. I like what I'm seeing there, and Brandon Angel has been a main three-point shooter. He and Keyshawn Bartholomew combining to shoot darn near 50% from three, with between the two of them about 20.5 points per contest. But I do think that UCLA just continues to really pound teams on defense. They have given up 70 points or fewer in pretty much all of their games this far this season, aside from that New Mexico game where they gave up 72 in a game that had a billion possessions. Don't think that that's going to be the case here, so we're writing up the under and at 3+ taking the points with UCLA. 795, 796 on the betting board. Another game they'll write up as Duke. They are on the road. They're facing off against Louisville, and Louisville does find themselves as home underdogs of 9.5 to 10 points. So on this game is 144, and I'm going to be writing up a Louisville. I do think that the three-point shooting percentage of right around about 29%, that's going to be going northward, and we were talking about with Ryan McIntyre, might be a little bit of a letdown spot for Duke after they have that massive win against Auburn. For Duke, they certainly do have a dynamo player in Cooper Flagg that's able to do pretty much everything except for one thing: 16.5 points, 8.5 boards, 4 assists, not shooting well from three outside of a 25% three-point shooting percentage, so that's a little bit of an issue. But for Duke, what I think is even bigger than that, just getting Tyrese Proctor to dole out the ball a little bit more. I liked him in that point guard spot a season ago, and they've been having him play off the ball a little bit more this year. Now he is shooting 46.5% from three-point range, 12.5 points, about 2.5 assists per game. Colin Canepa has actually been a little bit more of a facilitator with 3.5 assists per game, and I think that if you reverse roles, Colin Canepa, when it's all said and done, is a little bit of a better shooter than Tyrese Proctor. Maybe I'm just off in that evaluation, but you've had Caleb Foster fall off the table a little bit more in his facilitation over the last few games, but they were able to get really good production out of Isaiah Evans in that game against Auburn. He was able to knock down, I believe it was 6 different threes. He's been able to come in the last few games, and he's one of those forgotten about freshmen that's really been able to give the team some nice production. Meanwhile, for Louisville, they're going to be without Kashawn Pryor in this game and really for the rest of the season, but Javon Hadley is able to stuff the statue. He's able to give you 10.7 boards, shooting in the low 30s from three-point range. And Rain Smith, he has been the guy that's really been popping it from three for this bunch, shooting 39%, 12.5 points per game. And Chucky Hepburn, he's able to supply the team with 15 points per game. Now, this is a Duke team that they play some very rock-solid defense. Under the tutelage of John Shire, they've been one of the better defensive teams in all of college basketball. Duke has been able to do a nice job of being able to cut off the three-point line, as well as opponents are shooting overall about 29% from three. But if you look inside the numbers, they allow opponents to shoot 25% from three-point range at home, 36.9% from road and neutral court games. Meanwhile, Louisville, they themselves are allowing opponents to shoot 31.5% from three-point range at home. So I do think that this is a Louisville team that remains lively. I do think that Louisville gets some positivity with regards to the three-point shooting, but I still think that this is going to be a slow-down game. I set my total at a 141.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm writing up the points with Louisville. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra game, 797, 798. Louisiana Tech on the road against Louisiana. Louisiana is a 7-point home underdog, totals 148.5. Set my line at 7.5. So here at the 7, I'm going to be willing to lay with Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech coming off of that less than savory loss against Southern, but for Louisiana Tech, this is still one of the best 2-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, last year they were number 1 with that regard, and you've got the Pacho man, Daniel Pacho. I love what he's able to bring to the table down low for the team. 19 points, 7+ rebounds per game, and Caden Cooper has been able to throw in their 8 rebounds per game as well. But what a lot of people don't talk about with this Louisiana Tech team is that they've got a really good facilitator in Sean Newman, who's giving you 9 assists to about 2.7 turnovers per game. He's playing the team with about 9 points per game. Will Jeffries has come in from Pittsburgh, and when he's been out there, he's been able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game. He's been dealing with injury the last few games, so he's probably going to be out once again. But on the Louisiana side, they have just lost darn near everything from a season ago. Ketrell Garnett has always been a nice off-the-ball scorer. Now they're needing him to do a little bit of everything, and that's caused his normal 40% three-point shooting to go down to about 29% from three-point range, 7 points, 2.5 assists per game, and they've been able to get about 12.5 points per game out of Mustafa El Motekil, who's been able to come in from Morocco. He's been able to give you about 12.5 points, 4 rebounds per contest, so he's been able to do a nice job as a 6'6", a little bit of a combo player. You've been able to get about 38% three-point shooting as well out of Christian Wright, who was at Georgia to begin his career, was supposed to be a starting guard over at Oregon State before he got injured and just had not been able to get online until this season. But I mean, outside of that, you've got nobody else outside those two guys who are giving you north of 8.5 points per contest. Coron Davis gives you about 8.5 points, but he's been a little bit banged up, and he's only averaging about 12 minutes per game. You don't have a lot down low with Tariq Cook, giving you 3.5 rebounds per game. So outside of what you've been able to get in the 8.5 points, 5 rebounds per game out of Kyron Ratliff. You don't have anyone else that's giving you north of 4.1 boards per contest. Louisiana last year was number 1 in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. That was probably a charmed number 1 in all of college basketball, and right now that's nipping in the bud. 348th in the country this season. So I do think that Louisiana Tech goes in there, gets the job done against their interstate full. I did set my total at a 145.5. I do think that Louisiana Tech going to be able to D up in this one, so I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 7 with Louisiana Tech. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-563, 306-564. Maine is on the road against Fordham. Fordham a 5.5 point favorite. Total on this game 136.5. Set my line at 2.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Maine. Maine is not a flashy offensive team by any stretch of the imagination. They're hardly shooting 30% from three-point range, but this is a Maine unit that year in and year out, they do rank towards the top of mid-majors in terms of steals force on a per-possession basis, and they've been able to do a very rock-solid job with regards to their defense. Going up against the Fordham team that they've got a nice featured scorer. Jackie Johnson III has come in from UNLV. He's been able to give the team 18 points per contest. And Will Richardson starting to return to a little bit of prominence as well. His scoring has been teeter-totterish throughout the season, but he's been able to give you about 3 assists, 3.5 boards, 1.3 steals per contest for a Fordham team that they look to play a little bit up-tempo, but 13.5 turnovers per game, that's a little bit less than savory. They should be able to win the battle down low with Abdul Sambilia, along with Romello Dean combining for 11 rebounds per game, and Sambilia has been able to give you a block and a half per contest, but I like what Keon Burns is able to lend to the table with regards to his versatility. 6.5 boards, 13.5 points per game. Not shooting it well from three-point range, but he's able to give the team a steal per contest at right around about 6'6". And Kellen Tynes 2 seasons ago led all of college basketball in terms of steals per game. He's back at it once again. 12.5 points, 4 boards, 5.5 assists, 3.1 steals per game. Not doing a great job offensively is this Maine team, but they're really able to shut you down defensively. They've given up 66 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. I think that they're going to be able to put this Fordham team into a little bit of a phone booth with regards to their offense. You just have not gotten a lot out just off meter as well for this Fordham team. So I think that this is going to be a low-scoring slog. I'm in on the underside. My total 134.5, and here at 3+, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Maine. 306-565, 306-566. New Hampshire is going to be playing us to Harvard. Another game that I write up. Harvard is right now a 9.5 point road favorite. The last game is 135. Set my line at 4. I'm going to be willing to take the points with New Hampshire. I just really don't like what I'm seeing out of this Harvard team, and it is a Harvard team that has been dealing with a few injuries. Getting back Lewis Lesmond is big after he last season gave the team right around about 9 points, 5 boards per contest, and Robert Hinton, as a freshman, he's been their main guy. He's been able to supply the team with 16 points at 6'5". He's right now giving the team a little bit of versatility with the steal per contest, but it's seen his three-point shooting percentage dip down to about 28%. Chandler Piggy has been able to give you about 7.5 or so boards per contest. He's thrown in there 12 points, 2.5 assists, so have a lot of versatility out there on the floor. And Trey Woodyard right now missing for New Hampshire. That's the top returning scorer from a season ago. Was logging for the team right around about 3 assists per contest. That's been hurting them. But Emmanuel Okpomo, who comes over from Temple, go Owls, he's been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game. He's doing a rock solid job there. And Anthony McComb has become a really nice go-to scorer. 15 points per contest. Well, you've been able to get a little bit more facilitation. 11 points, 4 boards, 3 assists per contest out of Sami Pieces. He comes over from the country of France. He's been able to give the team nice production with double figures in 4 of the last 5 games, cutting down on the turnovers. I do think that New Hampshire finds a way to hold in there, even though they themselves have been sloppy with the ball with about 14.5 turnovers per game. But I do think that this Harvard team that has been a little bit lackadaisical in terms of guarding on the inside, and they themselves have just not been able to get a lot generated on offense. 67 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. That allows New Hampshire to hold in there in a game that I think is going to be a little bit of a slog, though. Certainly the New Hampshire defense has been falling off the table a little bit, so I did set my total at 138. I'm in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to write up those points with New Hampshire. 306-567, 306-568. Maryland Eastern Shore is going to be playing us a Wagner. Wagner finds themselves as 5-point road favorites. Total on this game is 126. Set my total on 127.5. I'm in on the over. You've got a Maryland Eastern Shore team that I think is going to actually put up a few points on the board against a Wagner bunch, and it's been one of your best mid-major defenses in all of college basketball. Top 150 team in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis in Wagner. Right now, outside the top 325 in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, Javier Esquire has been your top scorer, and he's been able to log for the team only about 9 points per contest. You have been able to get a little bit of production whenever Ramir Moore has been out there, but he's only been out there for 2 games. They've been missing him for the last about 5 to 6 games, so that's been an issue. RJ Green is giving you about 5.5 boards, 8.5 points per game. It certainly as a whole is greater than some of its parts team, because right now you don't have anyone that's giving you double figures. The team is shooting its whole 34% from three, but the 13 turnovers per game is an issue. They themselves do a nice job of being able to turn you over, but Maryland Eastern Shore has actually done an okay job of being able to take hold of the ball. Casey Shaw, who comes on over from Winston-Salem State, along with his coach and Cleo Hill, about 18.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. Eastern Shore is turning the ball over about 13 times per contest. They're really not putting on a lot of defensive pressure either, and I think that's why you get just a little bit more scoring in this game. I set my total at 127.5. I'm in on the over for Maryland Eastern Shore. This has been a team that has been cranking up their tempo this year, and they've been far better on the offensive side of things. Look at them in terms of the defense. 361st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You do have a little bit down low, though. Jalen Ware comes in for Boston P. Has been able to give you about 6 or so rebounds per game. Christopher Flippin, he's been pretty flipping good down low, 9 points, 5.5 boards himself for a team that overall shoots about 33% from three-point. So did set my total at 127.5. I'm in on the over. But with this Wagner team, I do think that defense just stifles Maryland Eastern Shore. Willing to lay up to 5 with them. Set Wagner as a 5.5 point favorite. 3-6-5-69, 3-6-5-70. It is Army playing us to Cornell. Cornell is a favorite of 7 points on the road. Total on this game is 153. Set Cornell is just a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Cornell just not generating the same amount of turnovers as they have in the past, and even though they do lose their coach in Mr. Dan Earl from a season ago, he heads on over to William & Mary, and now they've got Joe Jacques, who has taken over the program. It is a program that is still playing super duper up tempo. It's a whole is greater than the sum of its parts sort of collective, with Cooper Norhead being their top scorer with about 12.5 points per contest. So AK Okereke has been able to give you about 4.5 assists per game, but I like the game of Jalen Rucker to be able to keep Army lively in this one. 19.5 points, 5 boards, 4 assists. Missed the entirety of last season due to I don't even know what, but 2 seasons ago was averaging 16.5 points per game, and he looks even better this season. And for Army, all the experience that those guys got without Jalen Rucker a season ago, it's paying dividends. Josh Scovins, 18 points, 5 boards, not necessarily popping it well from 3, but Ryan Curry is able to give you 4 assists. He's shooting 48% from 3-point range, 13.5 points per game. You've been able to have about 8.5 rebounds, 11 points per game out of 6'8" AJ Allen patch as well. It's an Army team that doesn't necessarily have the world's greatest amount of depth, but that starting 5 has been rock solid. They've been able to stay out of foul trouble. They turned the ball over just 11 times per contest, and they're now shooting above 66% at the free throw line. That has actually been an issue for them for the longest of time. For Cornell, this is a bunch that has been able to do a little bit better job with their defense recently. 71 points or fewer allowed in 3 of their last 5 games, but you've got an Army team that is really looking to push some tempo as well, so makes it very interesting with regards to this total. I set mine at a 154.5. You've gotten this Army team to go past 79 points in each of their last 5 games, albeit they had 2 games go to overtime, but this Army team is looking to push tempo. Cornell's running and gunning it, so I'm in on the over, and I'm in on the points with Army. 3 of 6, 571, 3 of 6, 572. It is Colgate. They're facing off against Northeastern. Northeastern, 7.5 point favorites, total on this game. It is 134.5. Set Northeastern as a 12.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. This Colgate team just is not what we're used to seeing this Colgate team being, and for Northeastern, they can be a little bit hit or miss from 3-point range, but they've got, in my opinion, the best 2 players out there on the floor, as Rashad King has been a king for this Northeastern team. 16.5 points, 6.5 boards, 4.5 assists, shooting 40.5% from 3-point range, and then Harold Woods, 8 boards, 2.5 assists, steal, 15 points per game, shooting 40% from 3. It's a Northeastern team that overall, they're shooting 34% from 3-point range, but for Northeastern, when the team has been really firing on all cylinders, the defense has been pretty rock solid, and though it still leaves a little bit of something to be desired, it's much better this year. Northeastern, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, back in the top 75 in all of college basketball, and this is a Colgate team that they've been slowing things down over the last few years, but that's been because they've been able to run nice, clean, efficient offense. Not the case this year. Colgate, 317th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Brady Cummins has been the main scorer for the team, giving you 11 points per game, and I like Jeff Woodyard down low. He's been able to give the team right around about 5.5 or so rebounds per game, but with Woodyard out of the fold, you really don't have a post presence with Keegan Records moving on in the offseason, just flat out of eligibility, and right now they've been relying upon Jalen Cox, who's been able to give you about 3 assists, 5 boards per contest, to be that do-it-all guy, because they always have one every single year, dating back to when they had Jordan Burns. They just don't have that this season. They're shooting 31.5% from 3-point range. I think the Northeastern is going to be able to win this game by double figures. Set my line at 12.5. I'm willing to lay with Northeastern. I did set my total at 132.5. Got a pretty slow and controlled Northeastern team that that's playing some rock-solid defense, and Colgate team that's just not throwing the ball in the bucket. So I'm in on the under and I'm willing to lay of Northeastern, 3-6-5-73, 3-6-5-74. Cincinnati, and yes, we are on the Cincinnati. Bill Belichick, they playoffs to Howard. Howard is a 27.5-point underdog. This game is 141.5 with Cincinnati. Set them as a 22.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Howard. It is the Howard team that does get loose with the ball. They've been turning the ball over north of 14 times per contest. That said, you still have some nice top-flight scores for this team that I think are going to be able to be force multipliers for them moving forward, as you've been able to get a really good just stat sheet suffer in general from LaSalle and Mark Gill. Gill has been able to give the team 5 boards, 3.5 assists, a steal, 10.5 points per contest. Not really popping in from three-point range, but that's why you've got Marcel Dockery, who's been able to shoot 44.5% from the outside, 14.5 points per game. Bryce Harris has seen a bit of a drop-off in terms of outside shooting, but he's been able to do a nice job impacting the game in so many other ways. 14 points, 5.5 boards, 2.5 assists for a team that is shooting its collective about 37.5% from three-point range. They have not been able to get out there on the floor. Some of the guys that they were anticipating via the transfer portal, they bring in a Syracuse and Duquesne transfer, Munar Hima. He's a 6'11" big guy who has yet to be able to hit the floor thus far this season, so they've been lacking a little bit down low. But this is also a Cincinnati team that I do think that eventually the fact that they beat up on a bunch of, shall we say, lesser competition is going to come back to them now. This is a little bit of lesser competition, not going to lie, but Simeus Lucasius has been a very versatile and nice player. 16 points, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists. Right now shooting 53% from 3. It's a Cincinnati team that has only turned the ball over 9 times per contest, shooting 40% from 3. I'm a little bit concerned that they shoot 59% the free throw line. Maybe I just am making a little bit too much out of it, but that said, you saw if Aziz Bandango down low is able to give you 2.5 blocks, 5.5 boards, 8 points per contest, so I mean, he should be able to dominate down low, but been still dealing with Dan Skilling, Stade Thomas, dealing with a few injuries, so this is a little bit of a depleted bunch as sort of mixing and matching with Jizzle James, giving you 5.5 assists, 14.5 points per game in the backcourt. I do think that Howard does enough to be able to remain lively in this one. I do think that this turns into an up and down game with a Cincinnati team that has been one of the most efficient offenses in all of college basketball at home against Howard team. We're going to push some tempo. So, semi-total 146F in on the over, and I'm willing to take the north of 25 here with Howard. Set them as a 22.5-point dog. 3-6-5-75, 3-6-5-76. Radford plays us a Bucknell. Bracket Bus and Bison are 6-point underdogs. Total on this game is 135. Set Radford as a 7.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Do like what I'm seeing from this Radford team down low as Josiah Harris has come in. He's been able to give the team about 7.5 points, 7.5 boards per contest. On the flip side, you've got a Bucknell team that does have Noah Williamson, a true 7-footer who's able to give you a block plus per contest. He's able to pop it from 3 if he really wants to, but that's not really his forte. He has been able to give the team, though, right around about 14 points, throwing in there about 6.5 rebounds per game as well. And then Brandon Macklin on the flip side for Radford, he's been able to do a nice job facilitating the offense with about 3 assists per game. And Elvin Edmonds coming back for this Bucknell team in that backcourt, that's big as well because that takes the pressure off of Josh Basco, a nice 3-point shooter that's been able to give the team double figures. That allows him to be able to do a little bit more. Ian Moda, who's saying 6'6", he at 6'6" has been able to shoot north of 40% from 3-point range. And this has been a Radford team that last year they were really less than savory with regards to their defense, still in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, leaving a bit of something to be desired this year as they're clocking in more in that neighborhood of about 226 in all of college basketball in that regard. But they've been getting better and better as the season goes along. Jarvis Moss has been able to give you 15.5 points per game, shooting in the low to mid 30s from 3-point range. Radford as a whole, they're shooting in the mid 30s from 3-point range against the Bucknell team that's actually really sped themselves up, but it hasn't really resulted in a lot of scoring. Bucknell in the top 75 in terms of total possessions per game, held to 67 or fewer though in each of their last 4 games, so not necessarily great on that front. Meanwhile, you've got a Radford team really coming into their own ever since their loss against Clemson, 70 or fewer allowed in each of their last 4 games. So do think that this is going to be a bit of a lower scoring game. Did semi-total 135.5. Radford at their core looking to be able to play some good hard-nosed defense. At a 135 exactly, I think you get just enough possessions in this game for and over, but I do like the way that Radford is performing in the backcourt. Do think that they get the job done. Willing to lay up to 7 with Radford. And at a 135 or less, and on the over. 3-6-5-77, 3-6-5-78. LSU is playing against the Florida Gulf Coast. Florida Gulf Coast just find themselves as underdogs of 14 points. So tonight's game is 139.5 with LSU. I set them as exactly 14-point favorites. So we're going to be looking for a little bit of line movement here. If you can get down to a 13.5, want to lay with LSU 14.5 or more. Going to be taking those points with Dunk City. It's a Florida Gulf Coast team that is well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. but they're right now dealing with an injury to their top rebounder, Keyshawn Kellman, so that has been affecting them quite a bit. You've got an LSU team that is coming off of a nice win in the SEC versus ACC challenge. Still do have a few question marks with regards to backcourt, as DJ Bailey, who comes over from Richmond, has actually been your top facilitator with a little bit over 3 assists per game. Now Cam Carter, who comes in from Kansas State, he has been solid. 18 points, 4.5 boards, a little bit over a steal per game. He and Jordan Sears both shooting 40+% from 3-point range. Sears has chipped in their 15.5 points. These two guys both give you about a steal and a half per contest as well. And then they've been saying it with their chests, as they've been able to get 5.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game out of Corey Chess, a freshman that's been able to do a pretty rock solid job down low. But for Florida Gulf Coast, they should still be able to do an okay job down low. Jevin Munoz being a little bit of a point forward that comes in from Delaware State, 10.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists per contest last year at Delaware State. Was shooting north of 34.5% from 3-point range this year. That has tapered off. He's shooting more around about 27% from the outside. It is a Florida Gulf Coast team that has been leaving a little bit of something to be desired on the offensive front, though Keyshawn Kellman, his best attribute was being able to bang down low. He still was giving the team about 10 points per contest for a team that only shoots about 33% from 3-point range, but Florida Gulf Coast has been able to do a relatively solid job hanging in there on the road. They're about 170th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against an LSU team that I think a lot of people will be interested to know in the top 40 with that regard. But Dalian Johnson has been able to supply the team with 13 points per contest. Zach McLean, the transfer from the Ivy League, has been able to shoot about 40% from distance, generating a little bit over a steal per contest. Do you think that Florida Gulf Coast, they can hang within 2 touchdowns in this game for a tempo that has been very, very much slow, but they've been able to do a nice job of being able to generate some offense as well, scoring 70 plus in each of their last 2 games. When they need to play up tempo, they're willing to do so. When they need to play slow, they're going to play slow, and I do think that both of these defenses come to the forefront here. Set my total at 138, so I'm going to be in on the under, and with 14.5 or more, take the points for Florida Gulf Coast. 13.5 or less, one to lay with LSU. 306.579, 306.580. Sam Hanford plays us to Austin Peay. Austin Peay is an underdog of 13 points, and your total on this game is 151 with Austin Peay. I set them as an 8.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Sanford does a really good job of making things frenetic, and just much like Havoc, they're a top 30 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they're coming off of shooting darn near 50% from 3-point range in their last game, and that's going to be a key for Austin Peay holding in this game. Austin Peay has been really slowing things down under Corey Gibson. They have seen a massive slowdown with regards to their tempo outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game thus far this season, and for Austin Peay, it has been a team that's been about 200th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Sanford, they're a team that very much gambles for turnovers. If they don't come up with the turnover, they're going to allow you a wide open shot. They are 270th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. As a result, they're one of the worst teams in regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And for Austin Peay, you've got LJ Thomas, who is a nice do-it-all player. He has come in from NC State, and he's been leading the way in so many different fronts. 19 plus points, 4 boards, 3.5 assists per game. And then you've got Mr. Isaac Haney, who's back from a season ago, really the lone out of their top 4 scorers that returns from last season. 13 points per game, shooting from 3-point range, 45.5% from the outside. And Austin Peay does a nice job of being able to keep things clean. They turn the ball over just 10 times per contest against the Sanford team that's looking to generate turnovers. That could be a good elixir to that. They've been having Ansel Emmanuel, the one-arm wonder, be able to give them a few rebounds, but he's been missing the last few games. Cy Wood has been missing for a few games as well, so they are going to be a little bit shorthanded down low. Flip side, you've got a Sanford team that has been headlined by Ryland Jones. He was the really lone of their top 4 scorers that returned from the season ago, but he's got an assist-to-turnover ratio for flowing some really good offense for the Sanford team, giving out 6 assists. He's chipped in their 10.5 points per game himself, and for Sanford, they're right now shooting 37.5% from 3-point range. Trey Ford, he's a former top 5 junior college transfer according to JUCOrecruiting.com. He's thrown in their double figures. Colin Holloway, he's been able to shoot 40+% from 3-point range. He's been able to supply the team with 14.5 or so points per game, and this has been a Sanford team that's been able to fire on its cylinders on offense, unlike an Austin Peay team that is right now 306th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Sanford, they're more 27th with this regard, but I do think that with Austin Peay, their ability to be able to slow games down with their ability to be able to take care of the ball, they do hold in this game, so I set my line at 8.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Austin Peay. I do think that you do get a lot of very clean offense in this game, so I did set my total 152.5 and on the over. 306.580, 136.582. Seton is playing against Mercer. Mercer does find themselves at 4-point road favorites. Total on this game is 154.5. With Mercer, I set them as a 3.5 point favorite. We'll take 4+ here with Stetson. For Stetson, it has been a very brutal year for them, to say the least, but I do think that they're going to hold in this game against a Mercer team that they're under the tutelage of Ryan Ritter. Ryan Ritter is a coach I really like. He's had success over at UT Martin along with Bethune-Cookman, but for Mercer, they do need to clean things up on the defensive side. Things 316th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not to say that Seton has been the Mona Lisa Vito defense themselves. They are currently 344th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Seton, they pretty much lost everyone that averaged more than 2 points per game from a season ago. But Mekhi Ellison has stepped in. He's been able to give the team 12 points per game. It's a Seton team that they very much do rely upon three-point shooting because they're going to give it up from three-point range as well. But as I said, this is a team that they're shooting about 33.5% from three-point range. They really just need to clean up the turnovers. They've been turning the ball over 15 times per contest for a team that is right around average or below average with regards to their tempo. That's not necessarily great, but I do like the game of Jordan Wood. He comes in from Howard. He's a 6'10", little bit of a combo player that 2 seasons ago shot 37% from three, 8.5 points per contest. Currently shooting only about 22% from three-point range this season. That should be able to rise up. Meanwhile, on the flip side, Ahmad Henderson, he's been able to come in from New Hampshire, give this Mercer team right around about 13 points per contest. He's doing a good job giving you a little bit of facilitation as well. So I do like what he's able to bring to the table for this unit, but he just don't have a lot of low post presence on this team. You've got John Quinones, who's able to give you a little bit of facilitation as well. He throws in there about 6+ points per contest as well. But for Mercer, right now they've been looking at Alex Holtz, who's been able to give him about 6.5 rebounds per game as their main rebounder, and Tyler Johnson. He's come up from the non-D1 ranks, and he has been a really nice go-to scorer. 16.5 points per game, shooting 44.5% from three-point range. But these two teams, they leave a lot to be desired on the defensive side of things for Seton. Even though it's been rough for them thus far this season, they've held within single digits against East Carolina, South Florida. They've been able to play some of these bigger teams tough. So I do think that they're going to be able to hold in this game as well. Set my line at 3.5. Won't take the 4+ here with Seton. Even though it's a slowed down game, I do think that you're going to get some clean offense, but 154.5, I just don't think that you get enough possessions for it. I set my total at 147.5 in on the under 306.583, 306.584. St. Louis plays us to Chicago State. Chicago State, 25.5 point underdogs. So this game is 156. Just appears as though Robbie Avila isn't necessarily firing all cylinders. Had quite a few turnovers in their previous game against San Francisco, so I did set my line at 23.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Chicago State. Chicago State right now looking like one of the worst teams in all of college basketball, but you also have a St. Louis team that's outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Phelan Forbes, who comes in for Presbyterian, has been able to give this team about 9.5 points per game. Chicago State not going to stand a chance down, though. You don't have a single guy that's giving you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, as you've got Quincy Allen, who's been able to give you about 4.5 boards, a little bit over 7 points per game. Cameron Jernigan, he's stepped in. He's been able to give the team 5.5 points. Shoots about 33% from three-point range. It's a 6'7", little bit of a combo player, but for Chicago State, they're turning the ball over about 14 times per contest. The Chicago State team well outside the top 325 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and that's compounded by the fact that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are 346th in all of college basketball because they can't clean up the glass at all, though Gabe Spinelli is able to give you a little bit over a seal, 8 points per game. This is a Chicago State team that they very much do sell out to be able to generate turnovers, and this is a St. Louis team that they do everything that they can to be able to get good looks from three-point range, only shooting about 34% from the outside. But Gibson Jimerson, despite a little bit of a cold game against San Francisco a few days ago, 19 points per game, shooting north of 40% from three-point range. Avila is still shooting 40% from three-point range. Again, need to clean up the 3.5 turnovers per game. As a whole, St. Louis is turning the ball over about 13 times per game, but Kalu Anya, he's going to be able to control things down low with about 11 rebounds per game. It's all about what you're able to get out of some of these other guys, like a Kellen Thames, who's been able to give you 9.5 points, 5.5 boards per contest. Larry Hughes II. Yep, I'm old enough to know when Larry Hughes played. He's been able to give you about 5 points per game as well. St. Louis should be able to get the job done, and they should be able to do so quite convincingly, but Chicago State looking to play a little bit more slow, a little bit more grimy. Their offense has really not been able to hit Mock Turbo, as they have scored 61 points or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a St. Louis team that they've been getting held down a little bit more recently as well. So this is a game where I set my total 147.5 in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to take anything north of 24 here with Chicago State. 36.585, 36.586. Prairie View is on the road. They're facing off against Mississippi State. Mississippi State 37.5 to 38-point favorites. So this game is 163, and I'm going to be willing to take those points. Set Prairie View as a 33.5 point underdog. And Mississippi State, under the tutelage of Chris Jans, has been one of the best rebound rate teams in all of college basketball, and they've been one of the best offensive teams in all of college basketball since he's taken over this program. You've got Keyshawn Murphy, who's able to give you 9+ rebounds per game to headline a Mississippi State team that is in the top 50 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And Prairie View, they are not in the top 50 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. As a matter of fact, they are 362nd in the country history, and they have been playing at one of the more up-tempo paces in all of college basketball. And to the credit of Mississippi State, a team that has been awful with regards to their offense over the last few seasons, they've now ascended into the top 25 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Very nice go-to scorer in Josh Hubbard, who's been able to give you 18.5 points per game. Do think that we're going to see a little bit of regression with his 43.5% three-point shooting, but all in all, it's been able to run a nice unit that's turned the ball over just 9 times per contest, and the name of the game for Prairie View is generating turnovers and being able to create havoc. But this is a Mississippi State team that they themselves are a top 25 team in the country in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis. We've got a pair of guys in Nick Anderson along to Naj Petaway, who have been able to combine for about 33.5 points per game for Prairie View, and they're combined shoot about 37.5% from 3 points for Prairie View. To their credit, they're only turning the ball over about 11.5 times per game, which typically they are much more loose with the ball than that. And you've had someone like Jordan Tillman come in. He was over at Florida A&M along with Southern Indiana. He's been able to give you about 9 points, 3.5 rebounds per game, but you could tell that they're missing Brian Miles from down low, and he was able to give the team 9 rebounds per game season ago. Now you've only got one guy, that'd be Marcel Bryant, who's able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game, so that's going to take it out of them a little bit. I just think that this has gotten up a little bit too lofty. Fully recognize Mississippi State coming off of just a complete bludgeoning of Pittsburgh a few days ago, and this is a team that they just continue to come up with really good defensive efforts for Prairie View. I think that they're going to get it through their skull that perhaps they should try to slow things down a little bit more, because for this Prairie View team, I'm not even kidding when I say this, they have, against D1 competition, given up at least 84 points in every single game thus far this season. I don't think that they are going to be able to keep this Mississippi State team to below 80, but I think that they're going to realize that they need to change their tempo a little bit more, because this is just not working out. I set my total at a 157.5. I do think that Mississippi State going to be playing this game a little bit more slowly, but also do think that this number has gotten a little bit ridiculous. Set my line at 33.5, so taking the points and the under, we wrap things up with a ratio of 6.587, 6.588. Iowa State is playing us to Jackson State, an underdog of 36 points. On game between 146 and 146.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points for Jackson State. Set them as a 32.5 point underdog. Just being able to get Deshaun Ruffin out there on the court is big. He was a starter over at Ole Miss a few seasons ago, has been dealing with injuries, so he's probably not going to look like prime Deshaun Ruffin for a little bit, but I knew he was a guy that when he was at Ole Miss, he was a starter like 2 to 3 years ago, shooting 40% from 3, was supplying 12 plus points per game, former top 75 recruit. That really elevates his team. You've got Jamie Mitchell, who's also able to help this team out as well. He's been able to give the team about 13 points per game. What's big about Ruffin coming back is that Jackson State really does not have a single guy that gives you multiple assists per contest. Who'll be able to give them some facilitation. You got Romeo Mansell down low, who's been able to give you 8 rebounds per game, and that's a big thing for Iowa State. They've really been able to upgrade what they've got down low. They bring in a few guys in the transfer portal into Sean Jackson, along with Joshua Jefferson, would able to combine for 13 rebounds per game. Both give you about 10.5 points per game. Not really going to pop it from 3-point range, but this Iowa State team, despite that, still a top 15 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis, and their offense is more lethal with Milan Mimo Silovic. He's 6'8" combo player, giving you about 12 points, shooting 47.5% from 3-point range. Off the bench, you've been able to have a nice 6th man in terms of scoring in Curtis Jones, as we have seen Tamon Lipsby take a little bit of backseat in terms of scoring, but he has been able to do a tremendous job with his defense. 3 assists, 2.5 steals, 9 points per contest, while Keshawn Gilbert has really been that guy that has been able to gear the offense forward. 5.5 assists, 17.5 points per game. I do think that Iowa State going to be able to get the job done, and in quite convincing fashion, but I do think that Ruffin coming back for Jackson State, that helps them out a little bit. I did set my total 142.5. This again is an Iowa State team that's in the top 10 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Fully recognize that Jackson State has not been that. They are 352nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I do think that Ruffin is going to help out in the backcourt to be able to keep this team within the number. So do like the points and do like the under, and that'll wrap things up for the Sunday edition of Coast to Coast Soup Sound, part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Soups, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Jaden_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So, per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire and whatever you'd like here on this podcast, via that 5-star review, and I'm coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season on this podcast. So, I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRANGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.